They say an Omega can't survive the Lycan King's fury. Elara Vance was about to prove them all wrong, or die trying. Blood dripped from her split lip as she knelt in the dirt, every eye in the pack court watching her fall apart. Her uncle's hand had cracked across her face like a whip, the sound echoing through the stone hall. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared, waiting for her to break completely. Then the king stood. The temperature dropped. The air itself seemed to choke, and when Draven Kale's voice cut through the silence, low, lethal, absolute, it wasn't a question. She is mine. If you want to know how a girl meant to be nothing became the only one who could tame a monster, stay until the end. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's dive into a story about survival, power, and the kind of love that burns kingdoms to the ground. Elara had learned early that silence was survival. She kept her head down as she scrubbed the stone floors of her uncle's estate, her knees aching, her hands raw and red from the harsh lye soap. The morning sun filtered weakly through the tall windows, casting pale light across the grand hall where the pack's elite would gather later that evening. Everything had to be perfect. Her uncle, Corwin Vance, demanded nothing less. "Faster, girl." The voice came from behind her, sharp, cold, and entirely unsurprised by her presence on her hands and knees. Elara didn't flinch. She'd stopped flinching years ago. "Yes, uncle," she murmured, scrubbing harder. Corwin's boots clicked against the stone as he circled her like a predator assessing wounded prey. He was a broad man, his wolf strong, his status in the pack secure. He'd taken her in when her parents died, an act everyone praised as generous. What they didn't see were the bruises, the hunger, the endless grinding cruelty delivered in whispers in closed rooms. "You're lucky I even let you stay here," Corwin said, his tone casual, conversational. "A broken Omega with no worth, no prospects. If it weren't for my charity, you'd be dead in a ditch somewhere." Elara said nothing. Words were traps. Silence was safer. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." She lifted her gaze slowly, meeting his cold eyes. There was no warmth there, no recognition of kinship, just disdain. "That's better." He smiled, thin and cruel. "Remember your place, Elara. You exist because I allow it. Don't forget that." "I won't," she whispered. He walked away without another word, leaving her alone in the vast, empty hall. Elara exhaled slowly, her chest tight, and returned to her scrubbing. The water in her bucket had gone murky with dirt. She'd have to change it soon. She glanced toward the window, toward the dense forest beyond the estate's walls. Out there, wolves ran free. Out there, no one told you what you were worth. But Elara wasn't free. She was a ghost in her own life, invisible except when someone needed something to break. Chapter 2. The Sketchbook. Later that night, after the pack's evening meal, where Elara served silently and ate nothing, she retreated to the small storage room she called home. It wasn't really a room, more like a closet with a thin blanket and a candle stub. But it was hers. She pulled a battered sketchbook from beneath the blanket and opened it carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. The pages were filled with drawings, forests, rivers, wolves mid-leap, wide open skies, places she'd never been, freedoms she'd never tasted. She picked up a piece of charcoal and began to sketch, losing herself in the lines and shadows. For a few precious minutes, she wasn't Elara the Omega, the worthless, the unwanted. She was just someone who could create something beautiful. A sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. "Elara, open up." Her cousin, Mira. Elara shoved the sketchbook back under the blanket and opened the door. Mira stood there, arms crossed, her expression twisted with irritation. "Father wants you in the main hall, now." "Why?" "Does it matter?" Mira's lip curled. "Just move." Elara followed her cousin through the dim corridors, her stomach knotting with dread. Being summoned at night was never good. Corwin didn't need her for anything legitimate. Whatever this was, it would hurt. They reached the hall, and Elara froze. The pack council was assembled. Elders, enforcers. Her uncle stood at the center, his expression cold and victorious. And beside him, Elara's breath caught. A tall, silver-haired elder held up a delicate necklace. Emerald stones glinted in the candlelight. It was Lady Thorne's necklace, one of the pack's most prized heirlooms. This, the elder said slowly, was found hidden in Elara Vance's quarters. The room went silent. Elara's heart slammed against her ribs. "No," she whispered. "That's not... I didn't..." Silence. Corwin's voice cracked like a whip. "You were seen near Lady Thorne's chambers yesterday. Now her necklace is found in your possession. Do you deny being a thief?" "I didn't take it," Elara's voice broke. "Someone put it there, I swear." "Lies," Mira hissed from the side. "You've always been jealous, always wanting what you can't have." "No." "Enough." The silver-haired elder raised a hand. "The evidence is clear. Elara Vance, you are accused of theft. The penalty is exile, or worse." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Exile meant death. Omegas didn't survive alone. "Please," Elara whispered, her voice shaking. "Please, I didn't..." Corwin stepped forward, his face a mask of false disappointment. "I tried to help you, girl. I gave you a home. And this is how you repay me?" He moved so fast she didn't see it coming. His hand cracked across her face, the impact snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek. She stumbled, fell to her knees, the stone floor cold and unforgiving beneath her. Blood filled her mouth. Her vision blurred, and then the doors slammed open. Chapter 3. The King Arrives. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Every head turned, every breath held. A figure stepped through the doorway, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Draven Kale, Lycan King, ruler of the Northern Territories. A legend whispered in fear and awe. He was taller than any man had a right to be, his frame wrapped in dark leather and steel. Black hair fell past his shoulders, framing a face carved from stone and shadow. But it was his eyes that stopped hearts, pale silver, cold as winter, and utterly merciless. He didn't need to announce himself. Power rolled off him in waves, suffocating, absolute. The pack elders bowed their heads instinctively. Even Corwin took a step back. Draven's gaze swept the room, taking in the scene with lethal precision. Then his eyes landed on Elara, kneeling in blood and dirt, her face bruised, her body trembling. Something dark flickered across his expression. "What," he said softly, "is happening here?" His voice was quiet, controlled, terrifying. The silver-haired elder stepped forward, bowing low. "Your Majesty, we are handling an internal matter, a theft. The girl has been accused..." "By whom?" "Her uncle, Corwin Vance, and witnesses." "I asked," Draven interrupted, his tone dropping to ice. "By whom?" Corwin cleared his throat, stepping forward with forced confidence. "Your Majesty, I discovered the stolen item in her quarters myself. She is a liar and a thief. I was merely..." "You struck her." It wasn't a question. Corwin hesitated. She needed discipline. "You struck her." The words fell like stones into a silent lake. Draven moved. 1 step, 2. He crossed the space between them with predatory grace, and suddenly Corwin was pressed against the wall, the king's hand wrapped around his throat. "No one," Draven said softly, his voice deadly calm, "touches what is mine." Corwin's eyes bulged. Yours? She's nothing. She is mine." Draven's grip tightened. "And if you ever lay a hand on her again, I will tear you apart piece by piece and leave your corpse for the crows. Do you understand?" Corwin managed a strangled nod. Draven released him, letting him collapse to the floor, gasping. Then the king turned, his gaze finding Elara again. He walked toward her slowly, and she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He crouched down, his eyes level with hers. "Stand," he said quietly. Elara's legs shook as she obeyed, rising on trembling knees. Blood still dripped from her lip. She didn't understand what was happening, why the king was here, why he'd... "From this moment," Draven said, his voice carrying through the hall, "Elara Vance is under my protection. She belongs to me. Anyone who harms her answers to me. Is that clear?" Silence. Then, reluctantly, murmurs of agreement. Draven's hand closed around Elara's wrist. Not rough, but firm. Unyielding. "Come," he said, and just like that, her world ended, or began. She couldn't tell which. Chapter 4. The Ride to Blackstone. The carriage was black as midnight, drawn by horses larger and fiercer than any Elara had ever seen. She sat across from Draven in stunned silence, her mind reeling, her body still shaking from adrenaline and fear. He hadn't spoken since they left the estate. He simply sat, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the window, his expression unreadable. Elara's wrist still tingled where he'd touched her. She couldn't stop replaying the moment, his hand around Corwin's throat, the cold fury in his eyes, the absolute certainty in his voice. She is mine. What did that mean? Why? The words slipped out before she could stop it. Draven's gaze shifted to her, pale and piercing. Why what? Why did you do that? I'm no one. I'm nothing? His voice was soft, dangerous. Is that what they told you? Elara swallowed hard. It's what I am. No. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. It's what they made you believe. There's a difference. She didn't know what to say to that. You belong to me now, Draven continued. That means you are no longer at their mercy. You are under my protection. No one will touch you. No one will harm you. Do you understand? I don't understand any of this. You will. The carriage hit a rough patch of road, jostling them both. Elara gripped the seat to steady herself, wincing as pain flared in her ribs. An old injury, poorly healed. Draven's eyes narrowed. You're hurt. I'm fine. Don't lie to me. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, command. Elara's breath hitched. It's nothing, she whispered. Just old bruises. Draven's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. For a moment, she thought he might turn the carriage around and go back to rip Corwin apart after all. Instead, he exhaled slowly, leaning back. We'll have a healer see to you when we arrive. Arrive where? Blackstone Fortress. My home. Elara's heart sank. She'd heard stories about Blackstone, a fortress carved into the mountains, cold and brutal, where the king ruled with an iron fist and wolves bowed or died. She was walking into another cage, but this one had a monster for a keeper. Chapter 5. The Fortress. Blackstone. Fortress loomed against the night sky like a scar on the mountainside. Massive stone walls, jagged towers, and narrow windows that glowed faintly with firelight. It looked less like a home and more like a prison. The carriage rolled through iron gates, and Elara felt the weight of 100 eyes on her. Guards, servants, wolves who watched her arrival with suspicion and curiosity. Draven stepped out first, then extended a hand to help her down. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, steady. Follow me, he said. They entered through a massive stone archway into a hall that seemed to stretch forever. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering shadows. The air smelled of smoke and iron. A woman appeared from a side corridor, older, gray-haired, her expression stern but not unkind. She wore the deep green robes of a healer. This is Maven, Draven said. She'll see to your injuries. Maven's sharp eyes swept over Elara, taking in the bruises, the split lip, the way she held herself like something fragile about to shatter. Come with me, girl, Maven said, not unkindly. Let's get you cleaned up. Elara glanced at Draven, uncertain. Go, he said quietly. You're safe here. She didn't believe him, but she followed Maven anyway. Chapter 6. The Healer's Touch. Maven's chambers were warm, filled with the scent of herbs and oils. She guided Elara to sit on a low bench and began examining her injuries with practiced efficiency. You've been hurt before, Maven said. It wasn't a question. Elara said nothing. Broken ribs, poorly set, bruises layered on bruises. Maven's voice was calm, but there was anger beneath it. How long did they do this to you? It doesn't matter. It does. Maven met her eyes. You're not there anymore. Elara's throat tightened. She didn't cry. She wouldn't. Maven worked in silence for a while, applying salves, wrapping bandages. Finally, she spoke again. The king doesn't bring people here lightly. Whatever he sees in you, it's real. Don't waste it. I don't understand why he... You will, Maven said, echoing Draven's words. In time. Chapter 7. The First Night. Elara was given a room. A real room. Not a closet, not a corner. A room with a bed, a window, and a door that locked from the inside. She stood in the center of it, trembling, unable to believe it was real. She'd been given clean clothes, soft wool, well made, a basin of warm water, a blanket that didn't smell like mildew. She sank onto the bed and stared at her hands. They were still shaking. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. The sound echoed through the mountains, wild and free. Elara closed her eyes and let the tears come. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure if she was crying from grief or relief. Chapter 8. The Morning After. Elara woke to pale sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. Corwin, the necklace, the king's hand around her uncle's throat. She is mine. She sat up slowly, wincing as her ribs protested. The room was still there, real, not a dream. A soft knock at the door made her freeze. "Elara?" A young woman's voice. "May I come in?" "Yes." The door opened, and a girl about Elara's age stepped inside. She had warm brown skin, dark curls tied back, and kind eyes. "I'm Seren," she said with a smile. "I'm here to help you settle in. The king requested you join him for breakfast." Elara's stomach dropped. "Breakfast?" "Don't worry, he's not as terrifying as he looks." Seren paused. "Well, he is, but he won't hurt you." Elara wasn't sure that was comforting. Chapter 9. Breakfast with the Beast. The dining hall was smaller than she expected. Intimate, almost. A long table set with simple but well-made dishes. Draven sat at the head, his presence dominating the space even in stillness. He looked up as she entered. "Sit," he said. Elara obeyed, taking a seat across from him. Seren placed a plate in front of her. Bread, cheese, fruit. More food than she'd seen in weeks. "Eat," Draven said. She picked up a piece of bread, her hands shaking slightly. He watched her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said quietly. "I'm not afraid," Elara lied. "Yes, you are." His voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "But you'll learn. Fear isn't required here. Respect is. Honesty is. Fear?" He shook his head. "I have no use for it." Elara swallowed hard. "Why did you claim me?" Draven leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. Because I saw something in you, something they tried to bury, and I won't let them destroy it." "What if there's nothing to see?" "There is." His voice was certain, absolute. "Trust me." Elara didn't know how to respond to that. They ate in silence for a while. Then Draven spoke again. "You'll be introduced to the court this evening. There are those who will question my decision. Ignore them. You answer to me and no one else." "The court?" "My council, advisors, alphas from the allied packs." His jaw tightened. "They'll test you. It's what they do." "And if I fail?" "You won't." His certainty was terrifying, and somehow just a little bit reassuring. Chapter 10. The court gathers. That evening, Elara stood outside the great hall, her heart pounding. Seren had helped her dress, a simple gown, dark green, well-made but not extravagant. She looked almost like someone who belonged. Almost. "You'll be fine," Seren whispered. "Just stay close to the king." The doors opened. The hall was filled with wolves, powerful, dangerous, their eyes sharp and assessing. Conversations died as Elara entered. Every gaze turned to her. Draven stood at the center, his presence commanding the room. He extended a hand and Elara forced herself to walk forward, to take it. His grip was warm. Steady. "This," Draven said, his voice carrying through the hall, "is Elara Vance. She is under my protection. She is mine. Treat her as you would treat me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shock, confusion, resentment. An older man stepped forward, gray-haired, broad-shouldered, his wolf's power radiating like heat. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "with all due respect, she is an Omega. Why bring her here?" "Because I chose to," Draven said coldly. "Do you question my choices, Aldrich?" Aldrich hesitated. "No, Your Majesty." "Good." But Elara could feel the tension, the unspoken resistance. These wolves didn't want her here. They saw her as weak, worthless, just like Corwin had. A woman's voice cut through the murmurs, smooth, sharp, dangerous. An Omega under the king's protection. How curious. Elara turned. A strikingly beautiful woman stood near the front, her red hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes cold and calculating. "Lady Seraphine," Draven said, his tone flat. Seraphine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I only wonder, Your Majesty, what makes this particular Omega so special?" "That," Draven said quietly, "is none of your concern." Seraphine's smile widened. "Of course, Your Majesty," but her eyes promised trouble. Chapter 11. The First Challenge. The feast began, and Elara found herself seated beside Draven, acutely aware of every stare, every whisper. She barely touched her food. Halfway through the meal, Seraphine rose, her glass of wine held high. "A toast," she said, her voice carrying, "to our king, and to his newest acquisition." The word dripped with disdain. Draven's hand tightened around his goblet, but he said nothing. Seraphine continued, her smile sharp. "I do hope, Your Majesty, that you haven't grown soft. It would be a shame if sentiment clouded your judgment." The hall went silent. Elara felt the weight of every eye on her. She was the weakness Seraphine was pointing to, the flaw in the king's armor. Draven stood slowly, his chair scraping against stone. The sound echoed like a warning. "Seraphine," he said softly, "if you have something to say it clearly." Seraphine's smile didn't falter. "I only mean to remind you, Your Majesty, that a king must be strong, unclouded, free of distractions." "Is that what you think she is?" Draven's voice dropped to ice. "A distraction?" "I think," Seraphine said carefully, "that the court wonders why an Omega sits at your side." "Then let the court wonder." Draven's eyes swept the room. "Elara Vance is here because I will it. And anyone who questions that questions me. Are we clear?" Silence. Then reluctantly, murmurs of agreement. Seraphine inclined her head, her smile never fading. "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty." But Elara saw the hatred in her eyes, and she knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 12. The Curse. Whispered. After the feast, Draven escorted Elara back to her chambers. They walked in silence, the tension between them heavy. "I'm sorry," Elara said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause—" "You didn't cause anything," Draven interrupted. "They would have found another excuse. They always do." "Why do they hate me?" "Because you're different. Because I chose you. Because they don't understand." He stopped, turning to face her. "And because they're afraid. Of me? Of what you represent." Elara frowned. "I don't understand." Draven hesitated, something flickering in his eyes, pain, or maybe regret. "There are things you don't know yet, things I can't tell you." "Then tell me one thing." Elara met his gaze, her voice steady despite her fear. "Why did you really claim me?" Draven was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek, feather light, almost tender. "Because," he said softly, "I saw myself in you, and I won't let them break you the way they tried to break me." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the flickering torchlight. Elara pressed a hand to her chest, her heart racing. What kind of monster saw himself in her, and what did that make her? Chapter 13. The Nightmare. That night, Elara dreamed. She was running through the forest, branches clawing at her skin, her breath ragged. Something was chasing her, something massive, dark, unstoppable. She stumbled, fell, and turned to see a wolf, but not a wolf. Too large, too powerful. Eyes burning silver, fangs dripping shadow. A beast. It lunged. Elara woke with a gasp, her body soaked in sweat. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Just a dream, just a dream. But the image lingered, and somewhere deep in the fortress, a wolf howled, low, mournful, and utterly, terrifyingly alone. Chapter 14. Maven's Warning. The next morning, Elara sought out Maven. The healer was in her garden, tending to a bed of night-blooming herbs. "Can't sleep?" Maven asked without looking up. "I had a nightmare." "About?" Elara hesitated. "A wolf. A beast. It was wrong." Maven's hands stilled. She glanced at Elara, her expression unreadable. "What did it look like?" "Too big. Silver eyes, like something out of a nightmare." Maven set down her shears, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Listen to me carefully, girl. There are things in this fortress that are better left unknown. If you're smart, you'll keep your head down and your questions to yourself." "But no." Maven's voice was firm. "The king has his reasons for bringing you here. Trust him. But don't go looking for answers you're not ready to find." Elara's stomach churned. "What aren't you telling me?" Maven met her eyes, and for the first time, Elara saw fear there. "Some curses," Maven said quietly, "can't be broken. They can only be survived." And she said nothing more. Chapter 15. The Council Meets. In the fortress's war room, Draven stood before a map of the territories. His council assembled around him. Aldrich, Seraphine, and half a dozen other alphas watched him with wary eyes. "We have reports," Aldrich said, "of unrest in the southern packs. They're questioning your leadership, calling you unstable." Draven's jaw tightened. "Let them question." "They're not wrong, are they?" Seraphine's voice was silk over steel. "You've been different since the Omega arrived." "Careful, Seraphine. I'm only speaking truth, Your Majesty. The Council has concerns." Draven's eyes flashed silver. "Then the Council can voice them to my face." Aldrich cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, we mean no disrespect, but bringing an Omega into the fortress, claiming her publicly, it raises questions about your judgment, your control." "My control," Draven said softly, "is not your concern. It is when you shift without warning, when you vanish for hours and return covered in blood. When—" "Enough." The word was a growl, and the room went silent. Draven leaned forward, his hands braced on the table. "I am your king. My decisions are final. If you cannot accept that, there's the door." No one moved. "Good." Draven straightened. "This meeting is over." They filed out slowly, Seraphine lingering just long enough to cast a final calculating glance his way. When they were gone, Draven closed his eyes, his hands shaking. The beast inside him stirred, restless, hungry, and it was getting harder to control. Chapter 16. The Library. Elara spent the afternoon exploring. The fortress was vast, full of hidden corridors and forgotten rooms. She wandered until she found a library, dusty, neglected, but filled with books. She pulled one from the shelf at random. The title was faded, Legends of the Lycan Kings. Curious, she opened it. The pages spoke of ancient rulers, powerful and feared. But one chapter made her pause. The Curse of the Beast. Her hands trembled as she read. The strongest of kings carry a burden others cannot see. A beast within, born of power unchecked, of rage unspoken. It consumes slowly, turning man into monster. There is no cure, only control. And when control slips, the page ended there, torn away. Elara's heart pounded. Was this what Maven had meant? Was this what Draven was fighting? A sound behind her made her jump. She spun to find Seren standing in the doorway. "You shouldn't be reading that," Seren said quietly. "Why not?" "Because some things are dangerous to know." Elara closed the book slowly. "Is he cursed?" Seren hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that most would have lost themselves years ago." Seren stepped closer. But he's fought it, held on, longer than anyone thought possible. Why? I don't know, but maybe... Seren's eyes softened. Maybe he was waiting for something, or someone. Elara's breath caught. Don't break his trust, Seren said softly. Whatever you do, he's holding on by a thread. And if that thread snaps... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Chapter 17. The Garden Encounter. That evening, Elara found Draven in the fortress's inner courtyard, a small, walled garden with a single stone bench and a fountain long dry. He sat alone, his head in his hands. She almost turned back, but something stopped her. Your Majesty? He looked up, and for a moment she saw exhaustion in his eyes, raw and unguarded. You shouldn't be here, he said. Neither should you. A faint smile flickered across his face. Fair point. Elara sat beside him, leaving space between them. They sat in silence for a while, the night air cool and still. Do you ever wish, Draven said quietly, that you could just disappear? Leave it all behind? Every day, Elara admitted. He glanced at her, something like understanding passing between them. They told me, Elara said carefully, that you're cursed. Draven's expression shuddered. They talk too much. Is it true? Yes. Well, what happens if you lose control? Draven looked away. People die. Elara's breath hitched. Have they? Yes. The single word carried the weight of years. I'm sorry, Elara whispered. Don't be. Draven's voice was rough. I'm the monster here, not you. You're not a monster. You don't know me. I know you saved me when no one else did. Draven met her eyes, and for a moment, the walls came down. She saw the man beneath the king, broken, fighting, desperate not to fall. Don't put your faith in me, he said softly. I'll only disappoint you. Too late, Elara said, and she meant it. Chapter 18. The plot unfolds. In the shadows of the fortress, Seraphine met with Aldrich in secret. He's weakening, she said. You saw it tonight. The Omega is a distraction, Aldrich agreed. But how do we use it? Seraphine smiled, cold and calculating. Simple. We turn the council against him, make them see that he's lost control, that he's unfit to rule. And then? Then we offer them a solution. Seraphine's eyes glinted. A new king. One who isn't cursed. Aldrich hesitated. You're talking about treason. I'm talking about survival. Seraphine leaned closer. The beast will consume him. It's only a matter of time. We're just speeding things along. Aldrich's jaw tightened. And the girl? She's leverage. Nothing more. Seraphine's smile widened. And when the time comes, we'll use her to break him completely. Chapter 19, The First Strike. The attack came 3 nights later. Elara woke to the sound of shattering glass. She bolted upright, her heart racing. Her door burst open. Seren stood there, pale and terrified. We have to go, now! What's happening? They're coming for you. Elara didn't ask who. She ran. They fled through the corridors, Seren leading the way. Behind them, Elara could hear shouts, footsteps, the clash of steel. Where's the king? Elara gasped. Fighting. He sent me to get you out. They reached a hidden staircase, descending into darkness. Elara's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, and then they stopped. A figure blocked the way, tall, armored, his face hidden beneath a helm. End of the line, he said. Seren stepped in front of Elara, her small frame trembling but defiant. You'll have to go through me, the soldier laughed. Gladly. He moved, and Draven appeared behind him like a shadow made flesh. One hand, one motion. The soldier's neck snapped. Draven let the body fall, his eyes blazing silver. Blood streaked his armor. His breathing was ragged. Are you hurt? He demanded. No, Elara whispered. Good. He grabbed her hand. Stay with me. They ran together, back up the stairs, through the chaos. The fortress was under siege. Traitors, not invaders. A coup. Draven fought like a demon, cutting through enemies with brutal efficiency. But Elara could see it. The way his movements were just a little too wild, a little too savage. The beast was rising, and she didn't know how long he could hold it back. But, Chapter 20, The Breaking Point. They reached the throne room, and Draven slammed the doors shut behind them, barricading them. "We're trapped," Elara said. "I know." Draven turned to her, his eyes flickering between silver and human. "Listen to me. Whatever happens, whatever I become, don't try to save me. Just run." "No." "Elara, no." She stepped closer, her voice fierce. "I'm not leaving you. You don't understand. Then make me understand." Draven's control shattered. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip tight but not painful. "I am cursed. I am a monster, and if I lose control, I will kill everything in my path, including you." "Then don't lose control," Elara said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. "It's not that simple. Then I'll help you." Draven stared at her, something breaking in his eyes. "Why? Why would you do that?" "Because," Elara said softly, "you're the first person who ever saw me as something more than broken. Let me return the favor." For a moment, the world stood still. Then the doors exploded inward. Aldrich and Seraphine stood at the head of a dozen armed wolves, their expressions cold and victorious. "It's over, Draven," Aldrich said. "Step down. Let this end peacefully." Draven's eyes burned silver. "Never." "Then you leave us no choice." They attacked, and the beast finally broke free. The transformation was not sudden. It was an unraveling. Draven's body convulsed, muscles rippling beneath skin that seemed too tight to contain what lived inside him. His eyes blazed pure silver, no trace of humanity left in them. The sound that tore from his throat was not a growl. It was something primal, ancient, wrong. Elara stumbled backward, her breath caught in her chest. This was the beast Maven had warned her about. This was the curse the book spoke of in hushed, terrified whispers. Draven's form shifted, bones cracking and reshaping. He grew larger, his frame expanding until he stood nearly 8 feet tall, his shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. Black fur rippled across his skin like shadow made solid. His hands, no, claws now, extended, each talon as long as a dagger. And his face, half man, half wolf, twisted into something that should not exist. Aldrich took an involuntary step back. Even Seraphine's confident smile faltered. "Fire!" Aldrich barked. "Bring him down!" The wolves surged forward. Draven moved like lightning wrapped in fury. His claws tore through armor as if it were paper. Blood sprayed across the throne room's stone floor. Screams filled the air, raw, terrified, cut short. He was unstoppable, a force of nature contained in flesh and bone and rage. 3 wolves fell in seconds. 4, 5. Elara pressed herself against the wall, her mind screaming at her to run, to hide, to survive. But her feet wouldn't move. She couldn't look away. A soldier lunged at Draven from behind. The beast whirled, caught him midair, and slammed him into the ground with enough force to crack stone. The man didn't get up. "Retreat!" Aldrich's voice cracked with fear. "Fall back!" The surviving wolves scrambled for the shattered doors, their bravado gone, replaced by pure survival instinct. Seraphine was already halfway down the corridor, her red hair streaming behind her like a banner of surrender. In moments, the throne room was empty except for the bodies. And Draven. The beast stood in the center of the carnage, chest heaving, blood dripping from his claws. His silver eyes swept the room, searching for more threats, more prey. Then they landed on Elara. She froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run. This thing was not Draven. This was death in a form that knew no mercy, no control, no reason. The beast took a step toward her. Then another. Elara's back hit the wall. There was nowhere to go. "Draven," she whispered. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "I know you're in there." The beast's head tilted like a predator examining prey. "It's me. It's Elara." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "You saved me, remember? You pulled me out of that hall. You gave me a room. You told me I wasn't worthless." The beast growled, low and rumbling, a sound that vibrated through her bones. Elara's hands trembled, but she lifted one slowly, palm out. "I'm not afraid of you." That was a lie. She was terrified, but she said it anyway. You're still in there, I know you are. Come back. The beast stared at her, silver eyes burning. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then something shifted in those eyes, a flicker, a spark of recognition. Draven's voice emerged, distorted, broken, barely human. Run! No! Run! The word was a snarl, a plea, a command all at once. I'm not leaving you. The beast lunged. Elara didn't move. Draven's claws stopped an inch from her throat. His massive frame loomed over her, blocking out the firelight, casting her in shadow. She could feel his breath, hot, ragged, against her skin, could see the battle raging behind his eyes, man versus monster, control versus chaos. Please, Elara whispered, come back to me. Draven's claws trembled. Slowly, impossibly, they withdrew. He staggered backward, his body convulsing again. The transformation reversed, violent, painful, wrong. Bones snapped back into place, fur receded, claws shortened. When it was over, Draven collapsed to his knees, human once more, naked and shaking and covered in blood that wasn't his own. Elara moved without thinking. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his shoulders, uncertain. It's okay, she whispered. You're okay. I almost killed you. His voice was raw, broken. But you didn't. I wanted to. Draven lifted his head, and the anguish in his eyes nearly broke her. I wanted to tear you apart. But you didn't, Elara repeated firmly. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. You stopped. You came back. That's what matters. You should run from me. I'm not going anywhere. Draven stared at her, something crumbling in his expression. Then, without warning, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. His body shook with tremors he couldn't control. I'm so tired, he whispered against her hair. I'm so tired of fighting it. Elara wrapped her arms around him, ignoring the blood, the danger, the impossibility of it all. Then let me fight with you. They stayed like that, two broken people clinging to each other in a room full of corpses, until Saren burst through the door with Maven close behind. The healer took one look at the scene and cursed under her breath. Get him to his chambers, now, before the beast rises again. Draven's chambers were sparse, a massive bed, a fireplace, weapons mounted on the walls. Maven worked quickly, checking his vitals, applying salves to the places where his own transformation had torn his skin. Elara stood by the window, watching the mountains beyond, her mind still reeling. He pulled back for you, Maven said quietly, not looking up from her work. I've never seen that before. What do you mean? Once the beast takes over, there's no reasoning with it, no control. It kills until there's nothing left to kill. Maven glanced at Elara, her expression unreadable. But you talked him down. You brought him back. I don't know how. Neither do I. But whatever you did, it's the first hope I've seen in years. Elara turned that over in her mind. Hope. As if she could be anyone's salvation when she couldn't even save herself. Draven stirred on the bed, his eyes opening slowly. They were pale gray now, human, exhausted. How do you feel? Maven asked. Like I've been torn apart and put back together wrong. Draven's voice was hoarse. He looked past Maven to Elara. You're still here. Where else would I be? Anywhere but here. Draven sat up slowly, wincing. You saw what I am, what I can become. I saw you fight it. I saw you win. I didn't win. I just delayed the inevitable. That's not true, Elara said, stepping closer. You came back. You stopped. This time. Draven's jaw tightened. But what about the next? Or the time after that? Eventually, I won't be able to stop. And when that happens, then we'll deal with it then, Elara interrupted. But right now, you're here. You're you. That's what matters. Maven stood, gathering her supplies. I'll leave you two to talk. But Draven, rest. The transformation took more out of you than usual. When Maven was gone, silence filled the room. Draven stared at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. They'll come for me now, he said quietly. Aldrich, Seraphine, the council. They saw me lose control. They have the proof they need. Proof of what? That I'm unfit to rule. Draven's voice was flat, resigned. They've been waiting for this. An excuse to remove me, to put someone else on the throne. They're the ones who attacked you. They forced this. Doesn't matter. I'm the one who transformed. I'm the one who killed half a dozen wolves in front of witnesses. Draven closed his eyes. They'll use this to turn the packs against me, and I won't be able to stop them. So what do we do? We? Draven's eyes snapped open. There is no we, Elara. You need to leave. Get as far from me as possible before... No! This isn't a request, and I'm not leaving. Elara crossed her arms, her voice firm. You saved me when I had nothing. I'm not abandoning you when you need someone most. You don't understand what you're signing up for. Then explain it to me. Draven was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with years of pain. The curse started when I was 16. My father, the previous king, was obsessed with power. He made a deal with something dark, something old. He thought he could control it, use it to make our bloodline stronger. Draven's hands clenched into fists. He was wrong. The power consumed him, turned him into the beast. He slaughtered half the pack before the council put him down like a rabid dog. Elara's breath caught. And you inherited it. The curse passes through blood. I fought it every day since I took the throne. Some days are easier than others, but it's getting stronger, harder to control. He looked at her, his expression bleak. One day I'll lose. And when I do, I'll become exactly what my father was. A monster that needs to be put down. That won't happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Elara sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch. Because you're not your father. You fought this for years. You've held on when anyone else would have given up. That takes strength most people can't even imagine. Or stupidity. Maybe both. A faint smile touched her lips. But I've seen what you really are, Draven. You're not a monster. You're a man fighting a war no one else can see. And you're winning. I'm not... You came back. For me. When the beast had every reason to kill me, you came back. Elara reached out, her hand covering his. That's not a monster. That's someone worth saving. Draven stared at their joined hands, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone care. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. For the first time since the attack, something like hope flickered in Draven's eyes. Then the door burst open. Saren stood there, pale and shaking. They're calling an emergency council meeting. Aldrich is demanding your abdication. They're voting tonight. Draven's expression hardened. Let them vote. Your Majesty, I said let them vote. Draven stood, ignoring the pain in his body. If they want my throne, they'll have to take it from me. Ahmet. The council chamber was packed. Every alpha from every allied pack seemed to have appeared overnight, drawn by the scent of blood and political opportunity. They filled the tiered seats, their eyes cold and assessing as Draven entered. Elara walked beside him, her presence a statement in itself. She wore a simple dress, dark blue, well-made, and her head was held high despite the whispers that followed her every step. Aldrich stood at the center of the chamber, his face grave. Seraphine stood beside him, her expression carefully neutral. We are gathered, Aldrich began, his voice carrying through the chamber, to address a matter of utmost urgency. Last night, our king lost control. He transformed. He killed 6 wolves, our wolves, in a fit of uncontrolled rage. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Draven's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. This is not the first incident, Aldrich continued. For years we have witnessed His Majesty's episodes. We have made excuses, looked the other way. But last night proved what we have all feared. The king is no longer fit to rule. That's a lie, Elara said, her voice ringing clear. Every eye turned to her. Aldrich's expression darkened. You were not given leave to speak, Omega. I don't need your permission to tell the truth. Elara stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. You attacked him, you and your conspirators. You forced the transformation, and now you're using it as an excuse to steal his throne. Careful, girl, Seraphine said, her voice cold. Accusations of treason are dangerous. Then stop committing treason. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Aldrich's face flushed red. You dare? She dares because she's right, Draven said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. You orchestrated the attack. You wanted me to lose control. You wanted proof I was unfit. He looked around the chamber, his gaze cold. The question is, will the council believe a pack of traitors, or will they remember who has led them for the past decade? Silence. Then an older alpha stood, a gray-haired woman named Elara, her pack one of the most respected in the territories. I have known Draven Kael since he was a boy, Elara said, her voice measured. I watched him take the throne after his father's madness nearly destroyed us all. I have seen him fight the same curse that consumed his father, and I have seen him win, day after day, year after year. She looked at Aldrich. What I have not seen is proof that last night was anything other than self-defense. He killed 6 wolves, Aldrich snapped. 6 wolves who were attempting to murder their king, Elara shot back. Or have you forgotten that detail? More murmurs. The tide was shifting. Seraphine stepped forward, her voice smooth as silk. Lady Lyora raises a valid point, but we must also consider the larger picture. The king's curse is growing stronger. We all know it. What happens when he transforms in the middle of a crowded market, or during a summit with our allies? The risk is too great. Risk is part of leadership, Draven said coldly. I have never claimed to be perfect, but I have kept you safe. I have kept our territories strong, and I have done so while fighting a battle none of you could survive for a day. And that battle is killing you, Aldrich said, his voice softer now, almost sympathetic. We are not your enemies, your majesty. We are trying to save you. Step down. Let us find another way. There is no other way. The curse is tied to the bloodline. It doesn't end when I abdicate. It ends when I die. The room went silent. Then perhaps, Seraphine said quietly, it is time to consider that option. The words hung in the air like poison. Elara moved before she could think. She stepped in front of Draven, her small frame shielding his, her eyes blazing. If you want him dead, she said, her voice shaking with fury, you'll have to go through me first. Seraphine laughed, cold, mocking. A brave sentiment from someone so utterly powerless. I may be powerless, Elara said, but I'm not afraid of you, and I won't let you murder him because you're too cowardly to face your own inadequacy. Seraphine's smile vanished. You forget yourself, Omega. No, you forget yourselves. Elara's voice rose. He's fought for you, bled for you, kept you safe when he could have given up and let the curse consume him. And this is how you repay him? By demanding his death? She's right. The voice came from the back of the chamber. Heads turned. Maven stood there, her healer's robes stark white against the dark stone. Beside her was Serene, and behind them, Elara's breath caught. Dozens of wolves, young, old, soldiers, servants. People she'd never met, people she'd passed in the corridors without a second glance. We stand with the king, Maven said, her voice firm. And with the Omega, who had the courage to speak when the rest of you stayed silent. One by one, the wolves behind her knelt. Aldrich's face went white. Seraphine looked furious. And Draven stared at the scene, something breaking and remaking itself in his eyes. This council is adjourned, Elara said, standing. There will be no vote tonight. The king retains his throne. Aldrich opened his mouth to protest, but Leora's glare silenced him. The chamber emptied slowly, wolves filing out in tense silence. Aldrich and Seraphine left last, their expressions dark with promise. When they were gone, Draven turned to Elara. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. Too bad. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You made them your enemies. They were already my enemies. I just stopped pretending otherwise. Draven reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. The gesture was gentle, almost reverent. Thank you. For what? For believing I was worth fighting for. Elara leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Always. But the reprieve was short-lived. That night, as Elara returned to her chambers, she found Seraphine waiting in the shadows. We need to talk, Seraphine said, her voice soft, dangerous. Elara's hand moved to the knife Maven had given her, small, hidden in her sleeve. I have nothing to say to you. That's a shame, because I have quite a bit to say to you. Seraphine stepped into the firelight, her red hair gleaming. You've made yourself a problem, little Omega, and problems need to be solved. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Seraphine smiled, cold and sharp. You think standing up in that council chamber made you brave? All it did was paint a target on your back. You're not protected. You're not powerful. You're just a girl playing at being something more. And you're just a coward playing at being dangerous. Seraphine's smile vanished. In a flash, she moved, faster than Elara could react. Her hand closed around Alara's throat, slamming her against the wall. Listen carefully, Seraphine hissed, her face inches from Alara's. Draven is dying. The curse will kill him. And when it does, this pack needs a real leader. Someone strong. Someone who won't hesitate. Her grip tightened. You are in the way, and I don't tolerate obstacles. Alara's vision blurred. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then Seraphine released her, letting her collapse to the floor, gasping. This is your only warning, Seraphine said, stepping back. Leave, tonight, while you still can. Because if you're still here tomorrow... She smiled again, cruel and cold. Well, accidents happen all the time in a place like this. She left without another word. Elara stayed on the floor, her throat bruised, her hands shaking. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to pack what little she had and disappear into the night. But she thought of Draven, alone, fighting a battle no one else could see. She thought of Maven and Seraphine, who had stood for him when others wouldn't. She thought of all the people who had knelt in that chamber, believing he was worth saving. And she stayed. The next morning, Elara woke to find a note slipped under her door. The court is hosting a mating ceremony in 3 days. You are expected to attend. Failure to comply will be seen as an insult to the crown. It was signed by Aldrich. Elara showed the note to Maven, who cursed under her breath. It's a trap, Maven said flatly. They're trying to force Draven's hand, make him claim you publicly, or watch you be offered to another alpha. Can I refuse? Not without consequences. Maven's expression was grim. If you refuse, they'll see it as defiance. They'll have grounds to remove you, or worse. And if I attend, then Draven will have to choose. Claim you and make you his mate, which will tie him to you politically. Or let another alpha claim you, which will make him look weak. Either way, they win. Exactly. Elara closed her eyes, her mind racing. She'd barely survived one attack. Now they were boxing her in, using her as leverage against Draven. What would you do? Elara asked. Maven was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'd fight. But I'm old and bitter. You're young and have your whole life ahead of you. What life? Running? Hiding? Being someone else's pawn? Elara shook her head. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of letting people decide my worth. Then what will you do? Elara met Maven's eyes, her voice steady. I'll attend the ceremony, and I'll make them regret ever underestimating me. Maven smiled, small, fierce, proud. Good girl. The 3 days passed like a countdown to war. Draven tried to find a way out, a loophole, anything to prevent the ceremony. But the council had boxed him in perfectly. Refusing to attend would be seen as weakness. Letting another alpha claim Elara would be the same. And claiming her himself. It would make you a target, Draven said, his voice rough. They stood in his private study, maps and documents scattered across his desk. They're already plotting against you. If I claim you as my mate, then they'll have to go through both of us, Elara finished. You don't understand what you're asking for. I understand perfectly. Elara stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. I understand that they're using me to control you. I understand that they'll keep doing it until one of us breaks. And I understand that the only way to stop them is to refuse to play by their rules. And how do we do that? We show them that I'm not just some weak Omega they can manipulate. We show them that I'm your equal, your partner. Elara took a breath. We show them that together we're stronger than they'll ever be. Draven stared at her, something shifting in his expression. You realize what you're saying. I do. If I claim you, there's no going back. You'll be bound to me, to this life, to everything that comes with it. I'm already bound to you, Elara said softly. I have been since the moment you pulled me out of that hall and told me I was worth more than they said I was. Draven reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he cupped her face. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. A real smile crossed his face, brief but genuine. Then the moment shattered. The door burst open. Saren stood there, her face pale with terror. They're coming, she gasped. Aldrich, Seraphine, and half the council. They have enforcers. They're coming to arrest you both. Draven's expression went cold. On what grounds? Conspiracy. They're claiming you orchestrated the attack to justify killing Aldrich's wolves. They have witnesses, false ones, but it doesn't matter if they're false, Draven said, his voice flat. If the council believes them, truth becomes irrelevant. Then we run, Elara said. No. Draven, no. He turned to her, his eyes fierce. I'm done running, done letting them control me. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. You'll lose, Saren whispered. There are too many, even with the beast. Then I lose. Draven's jaw set. But I lose on my terms, not theirs. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Voices. The clink of armor. Go, Draven said to Elara. Take the servants' passage. Get to the stables. There's a horse, black mare, third stall. She'll take you to the border. I'm not leaving you. Elara said, No. She grabbed his hand, her grip tight. We're in this together, remember? Draven looked at her, something breaking and reforming in his eyes. Then he nodded. Together, he said quietly. The doors slammed open. Aldrich stood at the head of a dozen enforcers, his expression cold and victorious. Draven Kale, Aldrich said, his voice formal, ritualistic. You are hereby charged with conspiracy, murder, and crimes against the pack. Surrender yourself for judgment. No, Draven said simply. Aldrich's eyes narrowed. Then you will be taken by force. Try it. The enforcers moved, and Draven met them head on. But this time, he didn't transform. He fought as a man, brutal and efficient. 3 enforcers went down in seconds. 4. But there were too many. They swarmed him, pinning him down, chains wrapping around his wrists, iron, spelled, designed to suppress his wolf. No! Elara lunged forward, but Saren held her back. Don't, Saren whispered. They'll take you too. Draven was dragged to his feet, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He looked at Elara, his expression anguished. Run, he mouthed. But Elara didn't run. She stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. If you're taking him, you're taking me too. Aldrich turned, his expression cold. The Omega is not charged. I don't care. Where he goes, I go. Elara, no. Draven's voice was raw. Yes. She met his eyes, her voice steady. I told you, together. Aldrich smiled, thin, cruel. Very well, chain them both. Hands grabbed Elara, cold iron closing around her wrists. The metal bit into her skin, heavy and unyielding. As they were dragged from the room, Elara caught Saren's eye. The girl nodded once, a promise. She would do something, find help, something. But as the dungeon doors closed behind them, swallowing them in darkness, Elara wondered if even Saren's loyalty would be enough. Draven was chained to the far wall, his head bowed, blood dripping onto the stone floor. Elara was thrown into a cell across from him, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed through her bones. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Draven lifted his head, his eyes finding hers in the darkness. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't be, Elara said. We're not done yet. Elara, we're not done, she repeated, her voice fierce. Do you hear me? We're not done. Draven stared at her, and slowly, impossibly, he smiled. Together, he said. Together, Elara echoed. And in the darkness, that single word became a vow. The dungeon smelled of old blood and despair. Elara sat with her back against the cold stone wall, her wrists raw where the iron shackles had rubbed them bloody. Across from her, in a cell barely large enough to stand in, Draven hung from chains bolted into the ceiling. They'd stripped him to the waist, and she could see the marks, old scars layered over new wounds, a map of every battle he'd fought, every transformation he'd survived. His head hung forward, dark hair obscuring his face. But she knew he wasn't sleeping. The tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers occasionally flexed against the chains, he was awake, waiting. "How long do you think they'll leave us here?" Elara's voice broke the silence, rough from thirst. Draven lifted his head slowly. In the dim torchlight filtering through the barred window, his eyes were shadowed, haunted. "Until they've built their case, gathered enough lies to make execution look like justice." "How long is that?" "A day, maybe 2. His voice was flat, resigned. "Aldrich won't waste time. He knows the longer I'm alive, the more chance someone will question this farce." Elara pulled at her chains experimentally. They didn't budge. "There has to be a way out." "There isn't." Draven's voice carried a weight that went beyond physical exhaustion. "These chains are spelled. Iron mixed with wolfsbane and something older. Even if I could transform, the beast can't break them." "Then we convince someone to let us out." "Who?" Draven's laugh was bitter. "Maven, Saren, they're loyal, but they're not stupid. Aldrich will have them watched. Anyone who helps us dies beside us." "So we just wait? Accept this? What choice do we have?" Elara was silent for a moment, her mind racing. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "We fight. Even if it's hopeless. Even if we lose, we fight." Draven looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You should have run when you had the chance." "Probably, but I didn't." "Why?" Elara met his eyes. "Because you're the first person who ever made me believe I was more than what they told me I was. And I won't let them take that away. Not from you. Not from me." Draven's throat worked, emotions flickering across his face, too fast to name. "I've lived for 20 years carrying this curse, fighting it every single day, and I've never been more afraid than I am right now. Of dying? Of failing you." His voice cracked. "You put your faith in me, and I—" "Stop." Elara leaned forward as far as her chains allowed. "You haven't failed me. We're still alive. We're still fighting. That's not failure. We're in a dungeon waiting for execution. We're together." Elara's voice was fierce. "They wanted to break us apart, use me against you, and we didn't let them. That matters." Draven stared at her, and slowly, impossibly, he smiled, small, sad, but real. "How are you so brave?" "I'm not brave. I'm terrified. But I'm tired of being afraid." Elara's chains clinked as she shifted. "My whole life, people have told me what I am, worthless, broken, nothing, and I believed them. But then you looked at me like I was something more, and I started to believe it too. You are more. So are you." Elara's eyes burned. "You're not the monster they say you are. You're not your father. You're the man who fought a curse for 20 years and never gave up. The man who saved a stranger because it was right. The man who—" Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Draven's expression hardened instantly. "Someone's coming." The heavy door at the end of the dungeon groaned open. 2 guards appeared, followed by a figure in flowing robes, Seraphine. Her red hair was pulled back severely, her expression cold and calculating. "Leave us," she said to the guards. They hesitated, then obeyed, their footsteps receding. Seraphine approached Draven's cell, her heels clicking against stone. She studied him like a predator examining wounded prey. "You look terrible," she said conversationally. "I'd expected you to hold up better." "What do you want, Seraphine?" Draven's voice was ice. "To offer you a deal." She produced a key from her robes, holding it up. "Your freedom, a pardon, restoration of your throne." "In exchange for what?" "The Omega." Seraphine's gaze flicked to Elara. "Renounce your claim on her. Let me arrange a mating with an allied alpha. Someone who can strengthen our political position. Someone useful." Elara's blood ran cold. "And if I refuse?" Draven asked. "Then you both die. Publicly, painfully, an example to anyone who might question the council's authority. Seraphine smiled. But if you agree, you walk free. You keep your throne. You just lose her. The silence stretched, suffocating. No, Draven said. Seraphine's smile faltered. Excuse me? I said no. You're choosing death over sense? Seraphine's voice sharpened. Over survival. I'm choosing her, Draven's eyes blazed. Over everything. Seraphine's expression twisted with fury. You fool! She's nothing! A broken Omega who— She's worth more than you'll ever be, Draven said quietly. And I won't trade her life for mine. Not for the throne. Not for anything. Seraphine stared at him, her face contorting. Then she turned to Elara, her voice dropping to venom. You've destroyed him. You know that, don't you? He was a king, a leader, and you turned him into this weak, sentimental, pathetic. No, Elara said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. I didn't destroy him. You did. All of you. By demanding he be perfect, inhuman. By punishing him for fighting a curse none of you could survive. We punish him because he's dangerous. You punish him because you're afraid, Elara interrupted. Afraid that if he succeeds, if he beats the curse and stays strong, you'll have to face your own weakness, your own inadequacy. Seraphine's hand cracked across the bars, the sound ringing through the dungeon. You know nothing about what we've sacrificed. I know you're willing to murder your king because he wouldn't bend to your will. I know you're willing to sell me like cattle to secure your power. And I know— Elara leaned forward, her voice dropping to deadly calm. That when this is over, you'll be remembered as the coward who destroyed something good because she couldn't stand to see it survive. For a moment, Seraphine looked genuinely shaken. Then her mask slammed back into place. Enjoy your last night, she said coldly. The trial begins at dawn, and by sunset tomorrow you'll both be dead. She left, the door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed through Elara's bones. Draven exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging. You shouldn't have antagonized her. Why not? We're already condemned. She could make it worse. How? By killing us harder? Elara shook her head. I'm done being afraid of people like her. Draven looked at her, something like awe in his eyes. You've changed. So have you. Not for the better. I disagree. Elara shifted, trying to ease the ache in her wrists. The man I met in that council hall wouldn't have refused Seraphine's deal. He would have calculated the odds, made the pragmatic choice, sacrificed one piece to save the board. That would have been smarter. Maybe. But it wouldn't have been you. Elara held his gaze. Not the real you. Before Draven could respond, the door opened again. This time it was Maven carrying a small basket. The guard stood at her back, watching. 5 minutes, one of them said gruffly. No more. Maven nodded, waiting until they stepped back. Then she approached Elara's cell, setting the basket down. I brought food, water, bandages for your wrists. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were red-rimmed. I wish I could do more. You're risking enough just being here, Elara said. Not enough. Maven's jaw tightened. I've served this pack for 40 years, watched 3 kings rise and fall, and I've never been more ashamed. It's not your fault. It is. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I let them twist the truth because it was easier than fighting. Maven met Elara's eyes. But I'm done being silent. What are you going to do? Maven glanced at the guards, then leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. There's a faction. Wolves who still believe in Draven, who see this trial for what it is. We're small, but we're organized. Maven, if you're caught, then I'm caught. The healer's voice was fierce. I'm old, girl. I've lived my life. But you and Draven, you're young. You have decades ahead of you. Decades you should spend free, not rotting in a grave because power-hungry fools wanted more. What's your plan? Can't tell you. If they interrogate you— Maven's eyes flicked to Draven's cell. Just know that dawn isn't the end. It's the beginning. Before Elara could ask more, the guards called time. Maven straightened, her expression smoothing back into neutral professionalism. May the ancestors watch over you both, she said formally, then left. Elara stared after her, her mind spinning. A faction. Organized resistance. Hope flickered in her chest, dangerous and bright. Don't, Draven said quietly. Don't what? Don't hope. It'll hurt more when they fail. They won't fail. Elara, they won't, she repeated firmly, because we're not going to let them. Draven's expression was anguished. How can you still believe? Because I have to. Elara's voice broke slightly. Because if I stop believing, then they've already won, and I won't give them that satisfaction. Draven looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together, he said softly. Together, Elara echoed. The night stretched on, endless and cold. Elara dozed fitfully, her body aching, her mind churning through possibilities and fears. She dreamed of forests and freedom, of running under open skies with no chains to hold her down. She woke to torchlight and rough hands hauling her to her feet. Move! A guard barked. They were dragged from their cells, still chained, and marched through the fortress. Dawn light filtered through high windows, pale and merciless. Wolves lined the corridors, watching in silence as their king was paraded like a criminal. Some looked away, shamefaced. Others watched with cold satisfaction. The trial was held in the Great Hall, the same place where Draven had first claimed Elara. Now it had been transformed into a courtroom, with the council seated in judgment and witnesses lined up like pieces on a game board. Aldrich presided, his expression grave and righteous. Seraphine sat to his right, her face a mask of calm authority. Draven and Elara were forced to their knees in the center of the hall. The chains were heavy enough to make standing impossible. We are gathered, Aldrich began, his voice carrying through the hall, to render judgment on Draven Kyle, former king, charged with conspiracy, murder, and crimes against the pack. Former king? Draven's voice was sharp. I haven't been stripped of my title yet. A formality will correct momentarily. Aldrich gestured to a scribe. Read the charges. The scribe stepped forward, unrolling a long scroll. Draven Kale stands accused of orchestrating an attack on his own council to justify the murder of 6 wolves. Further, he is accused of bringing an Omega of questionable loyalty into the fortress, thereby endangering the pack's security. Finally, he is accused of succumbing to the beast curse, proving himself unfit to rule. I orchestrated nothing, Draven said coldly. Your wolves attacked me. I defended myself. You transformed, Aldrich countered. You lost control. 6 wolves died because you couldn't master the beast. 6 traitors died because they tried to murder their king. So you claim. But we have witnesses who say otherwise. Aldrich gestured, and a young wolf stepped forward, barely more than a boy, his face pale and frightened. Tell them what you saw. The boy's voice shook. I saw His Majesty transform without provocation. He attacked the council guards. They were only trying to protect themselves, but he tore them apart. That's a lie, Elara said, her voice ringing clear. The Omega will remain silent, Aldrich snapped. No. Elara struggled to her feet despite the chains. I was there. I saw what happened. Your wolves attacked first. They were armed. They surrounded him. He defended himself. She's lying to protect him, Seraphine said smoothly. She's besotted, blinded by sentiment. I'm telling the truth. The truth, Aldrich said coldly, is that our king is cursed, dangerous, unstable, and he has proven time and again that he cannot be trusted with power. Then why did you serve him for 10 years? Draven's voice cut through the murmurs. Why did you bow and scrape and swear loyalty if you believed I was so unfit? Because we hoped you would overcome the curse, Aldrich said. But you haven't. If anything, it's gotten worse. The episodes more frequent, the violence more extreme. Because you've been pushing me toward it, Draven's voice rose. Every challenge, every conspiracy, every attempt to undermine my authority, you've been trying to break me, to prove I'm my father's son. Are you not? Seraphine's voice was silk over steel. Your father was consumed by the curse. He slaughtered innocents, and now I am not my father. Prove it. Seraphine stood, her gaze locked on Draven. Transform right now. Show us you have control. Show us the beast can be mastered. The hall went silent. Draven's jaw clenched. You know I can't. Can't or won't? The chains suppress my wolf. You made sure of that. How convenient. Seraphine's smile was razor sharp. You claim control, but when asked to prove it, you hide behind excuses. This is a farce, Draven growled. You've already decided my fate. This trial is theater. Then let's end the performance. Aldrich stood, his voice formal. The council finds Draven Kale guilty of all charges. The sentence is death, to be carried out at sunset. As for the Omega, she's innocent, Draven said quickly. She had no part in this. Let her go. Innocent? Seraphine's laugh was cold. She stood beside you, defended you, claimed allegiance to a traitor. That makes her complicit. She's nothing to do with... She has everything to do with this. Seraphine's composure cracked slightly. You threw away your throne for her, your dignity, your sense. She's poisoned you, turned you weak. She made me human, Draven said quietly. Something none of you could tolerate. Seraphine's face twisted with rage. Then she dies with you. No! Draven lunged forward, chains snapping tight. Please, I'll accept any sentence, any punishment. Just let her live. Why should we grant mercy to someone who showed us none? Because she's innocent. Draven's voice broke. Because she never asked for this. She was dragged into my world against her will. She doesn't deserve to die for my failures. Aldrich studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice thoughtful. There is one alternative. Draven went very still. What alternative? The Omega could be mated to an allied alpha, someone who can provide stability, protection, a fresh start. Aldrich's gaze flicked to Seraphine. Lady Seraphine has already arranged a suitable match. Who? Draven's voice was barely a whisper. A figure stepped from the shadows at the back of the hall. Tall, broad-shouldered, with cold eyes, and a smile that didn't reach them. Corwin Vance. Elara's blood turned to ice. No, she breathed. Your uncle has graciously agreed to take you back, Aldrich said. To give you a home, a future. He's a monster, Elara said, her voice shaking. He beat me, starved me. He is your family, Aldrich interrupted, and he has agreed to mate you to a respectable alpha from his pack. You'll be cared for, protected. You mean sold, Elara spat, like cattle. You should be grateful, Corwin said, his voice oily and familiar and hateful. After everything you've done, the disgrace you've brought to our family, I'm willing to overlook it, to give you a second chance. I'd rather die. That can be arranged, Seraphine said coolly. The choice is yours. Accept the mating or die beside your king. Elara looked at Draven. His face was anguished, desperate. Take the deal, he said hoarsely. Please, live. Not like that. Elara? I said no. She turned back to Aldrich, her voice ringing clear. I reject your offer. If Draven dies, I die with him. You fool, Corwin hissed. You could have had a life. I have a life. Here, with him. Elara's eyes blazed. And I won't trade it for chains in a different cage. Aldrich's expression hardened. Very well. The Omega is sentenced to death alongside Draven Kale. Both executions will be carried out at sunset. This trial is concluded. Guards moved forward to drag them away, but Elara's voice cut through the chaos. Wait. Everyone froze. Elara's mind raced. There was something here, something she was missing, a piece that didn't fit. She thought of Maven's words, the faction, the resistance. Dawn isn't the end, it's the beginning. You're so certain Draven is guilty, Elara said slowly. So certain he orchestrated the attack, but you've never asked why. Why what? Aldrich's voice was impatient. Why he would risk everything for no gain. Think about it. If Draven wanted to kill you, he could have done it 100 times over. He's stronger than any of you, faster, deadlier. Elara's voice rose. But he didn't. For 10 years, he held back, protected you, kept you safe. Why would he throw that away for 6 wolves who meant nothing? Because he's unstable. Or because someone wanted you to think that. Elara looked around the hall, her gaze sharp. Someone who benefits from Draven's fall. Someone who wants the throne. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Careful, Omega, Seraphine said softly. Accusations without proof are dangerous. Then let's find proof. Elara turned to Aldrich. You claim to want justice, truth. Then investigate. Question your witnesses under oath. Examine the scene of the attack. Look for evidence that doesn't fit your convenient narrative. We've already conducted our investigation. You've conducted a witch hunt, Elara interrupted. You decided Draven was guilty before you had evidence. You twisted facts to fit your conclusion. That's not justice. That's murder dressed up in formality. The murmurs grew louder. Elara could see doubt flickering in some faces. Not many, but enough. I'll make you a deal, Elara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Give us 3 days. Let us investigate. If we can't prove Draven's innocence, we'll accept the sentence. No argument, no resistance. And if you run? Aldrich asked. We won't. You have my word. The word of an Omega means nothing. Then you have mine, Draven said quietly. 3 days. That's all we ask. If we can't prove conspiracy, I'll walk to the executioner myself. Aldrich and Seraphine exchanged glances. Elara held her breath. Very well, Aldrich said finally. 3 days, but you remain under guard. Any attempt to flee, and the sentence is carried out immediately. Agreed, Draven said. Then this court is adjourned. As the hall emptied, Elara caught Saren's eye in the crowd. The girl nodded once, her expression fierce. Maven stood near the back, her face unreadable, but Elara saw the faint smile at the corner of her lips. They had 3 days. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Back in their cells, separate now, under heavier guard, Elara's mind raced through possibilities. They needed proof. Evidence. Something concrete that would shatter Aldrich's narrative. But where to start? Hours passed. Guards changed shifts. Torches burned low and were replaced. And then, in the deepest part of the night, Elara heard it. A soft scraping sound. Metal on stone. She sat up, her chains clinking softly. The scraping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. Then suddenly, a section of the wall in her cell shifted, a hidden door she hadn't known existed. Saren slipped through, her face streaked with dirt, her hands bleeding. We don't have much time, she whispered. Can you walk? What are you? Maven sent me. We're getting you out. The guards are taken care of, temporarily. Saren produced a key, unlocking Elara's shackles. Can you stand? Elara tried. Her legs shook, but she managed. What about Draven? Already handled. Saren pulled Elara toward the hidden passage. Maven's people are extracting him now. We're meeting in the old tower. Move! They ran through narrow passages, the air thick and stale. Behind them, shouts erupted. The guards had discovered something. Faster! Saren hissed. They burst into a forgotten section of the fortress, crumbling stone and forgotten rooms. Maven waited there, along with a dozen wolves Elara recognized from the hall, the ones who had knelt. And Draven, free of his chains, blood on his knuckles. You came, he said, his eyes finding Elara's. Of course I came. We need to move, Maven interrupted. Aldrich's guards will be here any minute. We have horses waiting in the lower courtyard. Where are we going? Draven asked. The borderlands. There's a settlement there. Wolves who've rejected pack politics. They'll shelter you. This is exile, Draven said slowly. This is survival. Maven's voice was firm. You stay here, you die. Both of you. Draven looked at Elara. She saw the question in his eyes. Together, she said softly. He nodded. They fled through the fortress, Maven's people covering their escape. Twice they encountered guards, and twice Draven fought them off with brutal efficiency. They reached the courtyard. Horses waited, restless and ready. Go, Maven said. Ride hard. Don't stop until you're past the border. Maven, no time for goodbyes. Go. Draven swung onto a massive black stallion, then pulled Elara up behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, holding tight. The horse lunged forward. Behind them, alarm bells began to ring. Shouts filled the air, but they were already through the gates, already racing into the night. The wind whipped Elara's hair back. The fortress shrank behind them, stone and shadow against the starlit sky. They rode for hours, the landscape shifting from mountain to forest to open plain. Draven pushed the horse hard, but not so hard it would collapse. Finally, as dawn began to break, he slowed. They were in a valley Elara didn't recognize. Dense forest on all sides. A river cutting through the center. Draven dismounted, then helped Elara down. She stumbled, exhausted, and he caught her. "We're safe," he said. "For now." "For now," Elara echoed. They stood there holding each other as the sun rose over the mountains. Free, but hunted. Together, but alone. And somewhere behind them, Aldrich and Seraphine would be mobilizing, sending hunters, spreading word that the fallen king was a fugitive. "What do we do now?" Elara asked quietly. Draven's jaw set. "We find proof. We expose the conspiracy, and we take back what's ours." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." He cupped her face gently. "Together." Elara leaned into his touch, letting herself believe just for a moment that they could actually win. Then the arrow struck. It hit Draven in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, blood spreading across his shirt. "No!" Elara dropped beside him, her hands pressing against the wound. Figures emerged from the forest. A dozen armed wolves, bows drawn. Leading them was a face Elara recognized. Not Aldrich. Not Seraphine. Mira, her cousin, Corwin's daughter. "Hello, Elara," Mira said, her voice cold. "Did you really think you could escape?" Blood pulsed between Alara's fingers, hot and relentless. Draven's face had gone pale, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The arrow had buried itself deep, just below his collarbone. Not fatal if treated quickly, but deadly if left. "Get away from him," Mira said, her bow still raised, another arrow nocked and ready. Elara didn't move. "Why are you doing this?" "Following orders." Mira's voice was flat, emotionless. "You're both wanted fugitives, dead or alive, though I'm leaning toward dead. Your father sent you." "My father wants what's best for the pack. Unlike you, I understand loyalty." Mira took a step closer, her wolves fanning out to surround them. "You always were weak, Elara. Pathetic. Running away was the most predictable thing you've ever done." "I'm not running." Elara's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I'm fighting." "With what?" "You have no pack, no power, no—" Draven moved. Despite the arrow in his shoulder, despite the blood loss, he was on his feet in a heartbeat. His hand closed around Mira's throat before she could react, lifting her off the ground. "Drop your weapons," he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Or she dies." The wolves hesitated, bows wavering. "Do it!" Mira choked out. "Shoot him!" "And risk hitting you?" One of the wolves, a scarred man with gray streaking his temples, lowered his bow slowly. "I don't think so." "That's an order from someone who isn't my alpha," the man interrupted. He looked at Draven, his expression carefully neutral. "We were told you'd gone rogue, that you'd attacked the council unprovoked. Does this look unprovoked to you?" Draven gestured to the arrow protruding from his shoulder. "You ambushed us. We were following orders from traitors." Elara stood, her hands still stained with Draven's blood. Aldrich and Seraphine orchestrated everything. The attack, the trial, all of it. They wanted Draven's throne, and they were willing to murder him to get it. "You have no proof." "I have a witness," Elara said. The lie came easily, born of desperation and fury. Someone from the council who saw everything, who's willing to testify. It was a bluff, a gamble. But the flicker of doubt in the wolf's eyes told her it had landed. Mira thrashed in Draven's grip. "She's lying. Don't listen to—" "Enough." Draven tightened his hold just slightly, and Mira went still. "You're going to tell me who sent you, all of you, and then you're going to let us go." "Or what?" Mira's voice was strangled but defiant. "You'll kill me? In front of witnesses? That'll really prove your innocence." Draven's eyes flashed silver. For a moment, Elara thought he might actually do it. Let the beast rise. Let it tear through them all. She could see the war raging behind his eyes, control versus chaos. Then he released Mira, letting her drop to the ground in a heap. I don't need to kill you, he said quietly. You're not worth the effort. Mira coughed, glaring up at him with pure hatred. Father was right about you. You're too weak to do what needs to be done. No, I'm strong enough not to. Draven turned to the other wolves. You have a choice. Come with us. Help us expose the truth and be remembered as wolves who stood for justice. Or go back to Aldrich, report your failure, and spend the rest of your lives wondering when you'll be his next target. The scarred wolf studied Draven for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, lowering his bow completely. Name's Gareth, he said. I served under your father, watched him fall to the curse. He glanced at the arrow in Draven's shoulder. But I also watched you fight it for 10 years. That takes strength most of us don't have. Are you saying? I'm saying I'm tired of following orders from wolves who care more about power than pack. Gareth looked at the others. Anyone else? 3 more wolves stepped forward, then 2 more. Within moments, only Mira and 2 others remained on her side. You're making a mistake, Mira hissed, scrambling to her feet. Aldrich will hunt you down, all of you. Let him try, Gareth said. He turned to Draven. We need to get that arrow out before infection sets in. There's a settlement half a day's ride from here. Neutral territory. They'll have a healer. We can't risk with... Your Majesty, with respect, you're bleeding out. We need to move. Now. Draven hesitated, then nodded. Elara could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his body was starting to tremble from blood loss. Bind them, Gareth said, gesturing to Mira and her remaining wolves. We'll leave them here with enough supplies to make it back, but they don't follow us. As Gareth's wolves worked to secure the prisoners, Elara helped Draven onto his horse. He swayed dangerously, and she had to steady him. Stay with me, she whispered. Not planning on going anywhere, he managed, but his voice was weak. They rode hard, Gareth leading the way through dense forest and rocky terrain. Elara kept one arm wrapped around Draven, feeling the way his body shuddered with each breath, the way warmth continued to seep through his shirt. How much farther? She called to Gareth. Another hour, maybe less if we push. He glanced back. He holding up? Barely. He's tougher than he looks. I know, but even tough has limits. They rode on, the sun climbing higher, heat pressing down through the forest canopy. Draven's breathing grew more labored, his weight heavier against Elara's chest. Talk to me, she said urgently. Stay awake. Trying, he murmured. Not easy. Tell me something, anything. What were you like as a child? Scared. The word was barely audible. Always scared. Of my father. Of the curse. Of becoming... You're not him, Elara said firmly. You'll never be him. How can you be sure? Because he gave up, and you never have. Draven's hand found hers, his grip weak but determined. You see things in me I don't see in myself. Then start looking harder. They emerged from the forest into a clearing. A settlement sprawled before them, rough wooden structures, smoke rising from cook fires, wolves moving about their business. It was smaller than Blackstone, but it felt alive in a way the fortress never had. Gareth dismounted, calling out in a language Elara didn't recognize. An older woman appeared, white-haired, weathered, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Who comes to Ravenshead? She asked, her voice carrying authority despite her age. Refugees, Gareth said, seeking sanctuary and a healer. The woman's gaze swept over them, landing on Draven. Her eyes widened slightly. The Lycan King, she said softly. I'd heard rumors you'd fallen from grace. Rumors aren't always true, Draven managed. No, but they're rarely baseless. She stepped closer, studying the arrow in his shoulder. That needs to come out. Bring him to the healing house. They carried Draven inside, a small structure with clean floors and the sharp scent of medicinal herbs. The healer worked quickly, cutting away his shirt, examining the wound. The arrow's barbed, she said. It'll have to be pushed through, not pulled out. This is going to hurt. Just do it, Draven gritted out. Elara held his hand as the healer worked. She could feel his pain in the way his grip tightened, the way his jaw clenched so hard she thought his teeth might crack. But he didn't scream. Didn't make a sound beyond harsh, controlled breathing. The arrow came free in a gush of blood. The healer packed the wound quickly, applying pressure, muttering under her breath. He'll live, she said finally. But he needs rest, days of it. We don't have days, Elara said. Then he'll die. Your choice. Elara looked at Draven. His eyes were closed, his face gray with pain and exhaustion. They needed time. Time to heal, time to plan, time to... We'll take the time, Elara said. Whatever he needs. The healer nodded, satisfied. There's a room in back. Get him settled. I'll bring food and water. They moved Draven to a small chamber with a narrow bed and a single window. Elara helped him lie down, pulling a blanket over him. You should have let me fight, he murmured, his eyes still closed. You did fight. You got us here alive. Barely. Barely is enough. Elara sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair back from his forehead. Sleep. I'll watch over you. Elara, sleep, she repeated firmly. His breathing gradually evened out, the lines of pain in his face smoothing. Elara sat there, watching him, her mind spinning through everything that had happened. They had allies now, Gareth and his wolves. This settlement, it wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had before, and they had time. 3 days before Aldrich expected them to return. 3 days to find proof. To build a case. He trusts you. Elara turned to find the old healer standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. He has no reason to, Elara said. That's what makes it powerful. The woman stepped inside, setting down a tray of food. I'm Nessa. I've run this settlement for 30 years, seen kings rise and fall, watched packs tear themselves apart over power. Are you going to turn us in? No, but I need to understand what I'm sheltering. Nessa sat in the room's only chair. Gareth says you're innocent. That Aldrich framed you, is that true? Yes. Can you prove it? Not yet, but we will. Nessa studied her for a long moment. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. A faint smile touched the healer's lips. I like you. You remind me of myself at your age, all fire and no sense. Did it work out for you? I'm still alive, aren't I? Nessa stood. Rest, both of you. We'll talk more when he's stronger. She left, and Elara was alone with Draven again. She ate mechanically, forcing down food she couldn't taste, her eyes never leaving his sleeping form. Outside, voices drifted through the window. Gareth talking to someone. The settlement going about its business. Normal life, unburdened by coups and curses and death sentences. Elara thought of Maven and Seren, still back at Blackstone. Were they safe? Had Aldrich figured out they'd helped with the escape? The thought made her stomach churn. She must have dozed because when she woke, it was to Draven's voice. You're still here. She sat up quickly. He was awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with something soft in his eyes. Where else would I be? Anywhere safer than beside a fugitive king. Stop calling yourself that. You're not a fugitive. You're innocent. The council doesn't think so. The council is wrong. Elara moved closer. How do you feel? Like I was shot with an arrow and had it torn out of my body. Draven managed a weak smile. But alive. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You kept me breathing when I wanted to give up. You talked me back from the edge when the beast wanted to rise. His voice caught. You stayed. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. Draven reached out, his hand finding hers. When this is over, if we survive, I need you to know something. What? You're not just someone I'm protecting. You're not just a responsibility or a burden or any of the other things I tried to convince myself you were. He met her eyes. You're the reason I'm still fighting, the reason I haven't given in to the curse, the reason I believe there might actually be something worth saving. Alara's breath caught. Draven, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're hunted and wounded and probably going to die, but I needed you to know. Before nothing, Elara interrupted. We're not dying. We're going to expose Aldrich, clear your name, and take back your throne. How? I don't know yet, but we will. She squeezed his hand. Together. The word had become their anchor, their promise, their truth. Draven pulled her closer, and despite the pain it must have caused, he kissed her, gentle and fierce and desperate all at once. Elara let herself fall into it, let herself believe that maybe, somehow, they could actually win. When they broke apart, Draven's eyes were silver bright. "The beast wants you," he said quietly. "Wants to claim you, protect you. It's never done that before." "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but I think—" He hesitated. "I think you're more than just an Omega. Something in you calls to something in me. Something old. Something that predates the curse." Maven said something similar, that my presence calmed you in a way nothing else could. "It's more than calm. It's like—" Draven struggled for words. "Like you're the missing piece I didn't know I needed, the balance to my chaos." Elara thought about that, about the way Draven had pulled back from the beast when she'd spoken, about the way his presence made her feel stronger, braver, more herself than she'd ever been. "What if it goes both ways?" she said slowly. "What if you're my missing piece too?" Before Draven could respond, Gareth appeared in the doorway. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." Draven sat up, ignoring the pain. "What kind of problem?" "One of Mira's wolves got free. He's heading back to Blackstone. He'll reach Aldrich by morning." "How long do we have?" 12 hours, maybe less." Gareth's expression was grim. "Aldrich will send hunters, real ones, and they won't just wound you next time." Draven's jaw tightened. "Then we need to move first." "You're in no condition. I don't care what condition I'm in. If we wait, we die. If we move, we might survive." Draven swung his legs off the bed, swaying slightly. "Gather the wolves. We're going on the offensive." "What's the plan?" Elara asked. "We find proof. Real, undeniable proof that Aldrich orchestrated the attack, and we broadcast it to every pack in the territories before he can silence us." "How do we do that?" Draven's eyes gleamed. "The same way they did. Witnesses. Only ours will be telling the truth." Within an hour, they had assembled in Raven's Edge's central hall. Gareth's wolves, a handful of settlement residents who'd pledged support, and Nessa, who'd agreed to help for reasons she kept to herself. "The attack happened in the throne room," Draven said, his finger tracing a rough map someone had drawn. "There were guards, servants, people who saw what really happened. If we can find them, get them to testify." "Aldrich will have silenced them," Gareth said, "bribed or threatened them into compliance. Not all of them. Some will have fled. Some will be loyal. Some will just be too angry to stay silent." Draven looked up. "We split into teams. Find these witnesses. Protect them. And get their testimony recorded before Aldrich can stop us." "And how do we broadcast it?" Elara asked. Nessa smiled. "Leave that to me. I have connections. Old ones. Packs that don't bow to Aldrich's authority. If we can get them the truth, they'll spread it faster than wildfire." "Then we have a plan." Draven stood, ignoring the way his shoulder screamed in protest. "Gareth, you take half the wolves and search the settlements near Blackstone. Anyone who worked in the fortress, anyone who might have seen something, bring them here. Elara and I will stay here and rest," Nessa interrupted. "You're still healing. Push too hard, and that wound will reopen." "I don't have time to—" "You don't have time to bleed out either," Nessa's voice was firm. "Let your people do the legwork. When they return with witnesses, you can question them. Until then, you need to heal." Draven looked ready to argue, but Elara placed a hand on his arm. "She's right," Elara said quietly. "You're no good to anyone dead." Draven's frustration was palpable, but he nodded. "Fine. Gareth, you're in command. Find those witnesses. Keep them safe, and get back here within 2 days." "Understood, Your Majesty." Gareth saluted, then turned to organize his wolves. As the hall emptied, Elara felt the weight of their situation settling over her. They were gambling everything on the hope that someone, anyone, would be willing to speak against Aldrich, that witnesses existed and could be found, that Nessa's connections were real and strong enough to matter. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Over the next day and a half, Draven healed with the stubborn resilience that had kept him alive this long. The wound was still angry and red, but it had stopped bleeding. He could move without gasping. He could think clearly again. And Elara stayed by his side, watching over him, talking to him, keeping the darkness at bay. They learned things about each other in those quiet hours. Draven told her about his mother, a gentle woman who died when he was young, taken by illness. About growing up in his father's shadow, watching the curse slowly consume the man who'd once been a hero. Elara told him about her parents' vague memories of warmth and safety, shattered by an accident that had left her orphaned at 8. About the years with Corwin, learning that survival meant silence and invisibility. "I used to dream about running away," Elara said, "just disappearing into the forest and never coming back." "Why didn't you?" "Because I thought I deserved it. The abuse, the pain. I thought," her voice broke slightly, "I thought that was all I was worth." Draven pulled her close, careful of his shoulder. "You're worth everything. Never doubt that." "I'm starting to believe it," Elara whispered, "because of you." On the second day, as afternoon shadows grew long, Gareth returned. He wasn't alone. Behind him came a ragged group of wolves, young and old, some injured, all frightened. Elara counted quickly. 12. Not many, but it was something. "These are the ones who would speak," Gareth said. "There were more, but Aldrich got to them first," Draven finished. "It's all right. 12 is enough." He questioned them one by one, Elara and Nessa taking notes, recording every detail. And slowly, a picture emerged. The attack had been planned. Aldrich and Seraphine had handpicked the wolves who would participate, promising them rank and power in the new order. They'd staged the confrontation, deliberately provoking Draven, knowing the beast would rise. One witness, a young servant girl, had overheard Seraphine laughing about it afterward. "The fool played right into our hands," she'd said. "Now we have all the justification we need." Another witness, a guard who'd been injured in the fighting, swore that the wolves had attacked first. Not in defense, but in aggression. "We were told to make it look like self-defense," he said, his voice shaking. But it was murder. Planned murder. By nightfall, they had testimony from all 12. Nessa's people had recorded it, written it down, prepared it for distribution. "This is enough," Nessa said, reviewing the documents. "This will reach every pack council in the territories by week's end. Aldrich won't be able to suppress it." "He'll try," Draven said. "He'll call it false. Coerce testimony from traitors." "Then we need more than just words." Elara had been thinking about this all day. "We need someone Aldrich can't discredit. Someone whose word carries absolute weight." "Who?" Gareth asked. "Everyone on the council is either with Aldrich or too afraid to speak against him." "Not everyone." Elara met Draven's eyes. "Lady Lyora, she spoke for you in the trial, questioned Aldrich's narrative. If we can get her to publicly support these testimonies—" "She's still at Blackstone," Draven said, "under Aldrich's watch." "Then we get her out." "That's impossible. The fortress is locked down. No one gets in or out without Aldrich's approval." "Nothing's impossible." Elara's mind was racing, pieces clicking into place. "Gareth, did any of your wolves serve in the fortress guard?" "3 of them. Why?" "Because they know the patrol routes, the weak points, the places Aldrich's people won't be watching." Elara turned to Draven. "We can get in, extract Lyora, and get her testimony before Aldrich realizes what's happening." "It's too dangerous," Draven said immediately. "If we're caught, we won't be." "Elara, we need her," Elara said firmly. "Without Lyora's voice, this is just," he said, she said. "With her, it's credible, undeniable. Aldrich's whole house of cards collapses." Draven stared at her, conflict warring in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "We go tonight. Small team. In and out before dawn." He looked at Gareth. "Pick your best 3. Wolves who know the fortress and can move quietly." "Your Majesty, you're still injured." "I'm going. This isn't negotiable." Gareth sighed but nodded. "I'll make the arrangements." As preparations began, Nessa pulled Elara aside. "This is insane," the old healer said quietly. "You know that, right?" "Yes." "And you're doing it anyway?" "Yes." Nessa studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, small, fierce, proud. "You've got fire in you, girl. More than I thought. Draven chose well." "He didn't choose me. Fate did." Same thing in the end." Nessa pressed something into Elara's hand, a small vial filled with dark liquid. If things go wrong, if you're cornered, drink this. It'll give you strength, speed, enough to fight your way out. What is it? Old magic. Dangerous magic. Use it only as a last resort. Nessa's expression was grave. And pray you don't need it. Elara tucked the vial into her belt, her heart pounding. They left as night fell, 6 wolves moving through darkness like shadows. Gareth led the way, navigating by memory and instinct. 2 of his wolves, brothers named Finn and Cole, flanked them, bows ready. The third, a woman named Kira, scouted ahead. Draven moved silently beside Elara, his hand never far from his sword. His shoulder had to be screaming, but he gave no sign of it. They reached Blackstone's outer walls as midnight approached. Kira returned from her scouting, her expression grim. "Triple the usual guard," she whispered. "Aldrich's paranoid. But there's a drainage tunnel on the eastern side, too small for most adults, but I can fit," Elara said immediately. "Absolutely not," Draven said. "I'm the smallest one here. I can get through, open the eastern gate from the inside, and let you all in." "It's too dangerous. If you're caught, then you'll come get me." Elara met his eyes. "We don't have a choice, Draven. This is the only way." He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he nodded, his expression anguished. "If anything happens to you, it won't." Elara kissed him quickly. "Trust me." The drainage tunnel was worse than she'd imagined. Narrow, filthy, filled with stagnant water that soaked her clothes and made her gag. But she pushed forward, inch by inch, until finally she emerged inside the fortress walls. She was in the lower courtyard near the kitchens. Empty at this hour, but not for long. Guards would patrol through in minutes. Elara moved quickly, staying low, keeping to the shadows. The eastern gate was across the courtyard, 100 yards that felt like a mile. She was halfway there when she heard voices. 2 guards, walking her direction, talking in low tones. Elara pressed herself against a wall, holding her breath. They passed within feet of her, oblivious. When they were gone, she ran. The eastern gate was barred from the inside, heavy iron that took all her strength to lift. But she managed it, inch by grinding inch, until finally it swung open. Draven and the others slipped inside, silent as ghosts. "Leora's chambers are in the north tower," Draven whispered. "3rd floor. We move fast and quiet." They made it to the tower without incident, but as they climbed the stairs, Finn suddenly froze. "Footsteps," he mouthed. "Above us." They pressed against the walls as a guard descended. He passed them without looking, his attention on the scroll in his hands. Too close. Way too close. They reached the 3rd floor. Draven knocked softly on Leora's door. A pattern. Code. The door opened a crack. Leora's weathered face appeared, her eyes widening. "Your Majesty," she breathed. "What are you—" "No time. We need you to come with us. Now." "I can't. Aldrich has guards on every floor. If I'm found missing—" "Then we make it look like you were taken against your will." Draven's voice was urgent. "Please, Leora. We have proof. Witnesses. But we need your voice. Without you, Aldrich wins." Leora hesitated for only a moment. Then she nodded. "Let me get my cloak." They were halfway down the stairs when the alarm bells began to ring. Someone had discovered the open gate, or the missing guard patrol, or any of a dozen things that could have gone wrong. "Run!" Draven barked. They fled through corridors filling with armed wolves. Finn took an arrow to the leg, going down hard. Cole stopped to help him, buying them precious seconds. "Go!" Cole shouted. "Get her out!" They burst into this courtyard. The eastern gate was ahead, still open, salvation 50 yards away. And then Seraphine stepped into their path. She wasn't alone. A dozen enforcers stood with her, weapons drawn. "Going somewhere?" Seraphine's smile was cold triumph. Draven's hand went to his sword, but they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, trapped. "It's over, Draven," Seraphine said. "Surrender. I'll make your deaths quick." "No." The voice came from behind Seraphine. Maven stepped into view, Seren at her side. And behind them, Elara's breath caught. Dozens of wolves. Maybe hundreds. Servants, guards, common pack members. The ones Aldrich had dismissed as worthless. "This ends now," Maven said, her voice ringing with authority. We've stood silent too long, watched you twist the truth, watched you destroy good wolves for your own gain. No more. Seraphine's confidence faltered. You're committing treason. No, we're choosing justice. Maven looked at the enforcers. Stand down, or stand aside, but you will not harm these wolves. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. Then one enforcer lowered his weapon, then another, then all of them. Seraphine stood alone, her face twisted with fury and disbelief. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, Draven said quietly. It is. They left Blackstone with Leora and an army of wolves who'd finally found the courage to stand. By dawn, Nessa had distributed the testimony to every pack council in the territories. By noon, calls for Aldrich's arrest had begun, and by sunset, word reached them that the council had voted, unanimous except for 2 abstentions. Aldrich and Seraphine were stripped of rank and sentenced to exile. Draven's name was cleared. Elara stood beside him as the news came, her hand in his, tears streaming down her face. We won, she whispered. We actually won. No, Draven said, pulling her close. You won. You never gave up. You made me believe I was worth fighting for. You saved me. We saved each other, Elara corrected. And in that moment, surrounded by wolves who'd chosen truth over power, Elara finally understood what freedom felt like. Freedom tasted like mountain air and hope, sharp and clean and almost painful after so long without it. But as the initial rush of victory faded, reality settled in like frost creeping across glass. Aldrich and Seraphine were in exile, but they weren't dead. And angry, desperate wolves with nothing left to lose were more dangerous than ones still clinging to power. They'll come for us, Maven said quietly. She stood with Draven and Elara in Raven's Edge's central hall, maps spread across the table, reports coming in from scouts across the territories. Aldrich won't accept defeat. He'll regroup, find allies among the outer packs, launch a counterattack. Let him try, Draven said, his voice cold. We have the truth on our side now. The packs know what he did. Truth doesn't stop arrows. Maven's expression was grim. We need to move fast. Consolidate power before they can organize resistance. Return to Blackstone, Gareth suggested. He stood near the window, arms crossed, his scarred face thoughtful. Reclaim the throne publicly. Show the packs that you're still their king. Draven's jaw tightened. The thought of returning to that place, to the dungeons where they'd been chained, the throne room where he'd nearly lost control, made something dark twist in his gut. No, Elara said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. We don't go back to Blackstone. Not yet. Elara, think about it, she interrupted, stepping closer to the table. Blackstone represents everything that was broken. The old system, the corruption. If Draven just walks back in and sits on the same throne, nothing really changes. It's just the same power structure with a different face. What are you suggesting? Leora asked. The elderly Alpha had stayed with them, her presence lending credibility to their cause. I'm suggesting we rebuild from the ground up. Elara's finger traced across the map, touching settlements and villages scattered through the territories. These wolves, the ones who stood with us, the ones who chose truth over power, they deserve a voice. Not just in who rules, but in how we're ruled. You're talking about a council, Maven said slowly. A real one. Not puppet alphas chosen by the king. Exactly. Representatives from every region, elected by their packs, with real power to check the throne. Elara looked at Draven. A king who serves his people, not the other way around. Silence filled the hall. The idea was radical, unprecedented. It flew in the face of centuries of tradition, and Draven was smiling. You want to remake the entire system, he said. I want to build something worth protecting. Elara's voice was fierce. Something that won't crumble the moment the next power-hungry alpha decides to make a move. Something that actually serves the wolves who need it most. The outer packs will resist, Leora warned. They're used to autonomy. They won't want centralized authority, even if it's balanced by representation. Then we make it voluntary, Elara said. Packs can choose to join or remain independent, but those who join get access to shared resources, protection, trade agreements, a voice in territorial disputes. You're describing a federation, Gareth said, his eyes widening, not a kingdom. Maybe that's what we need. Draven reached out, his hand covering Elara's on the map. This is brilliant, dangerous, probably impossible. His smile widened. Let's do it. Over the next 3 days, they worked without sleep. Messages went out to every pack in the territories, invitations to a summit at Raven's Edge. Not a command from the throne, but a request for dialogue, for partnership. Responses came slowly at first, suspicious, wary, but they came. By the end of the week, representatives from 18 packs had agreed to attend. Not all of them, but enough. The summit began on a cold morning with frost glittering on the grass. Wolves arrived in groups, eyeing each other with distrust. Hands never far from weapons. Old rivalries ran deep. Blood feuds stretched back generations. Draven stood before them in the hall that had become their temporary headquarters, Elara at his side. He wore no crown, no symbols of royalty, just simple leather and steel, the marks of a warrior who'd earned his scars. I called you here, he began, his voice carrying through the packed space. Not as your king, but as someone who wants to build something better. I've spent 10 years fighting a curse that tried to destroy me, fighting alone. And I nearly lost. He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. But I'm still here, because I found something stronger than the curse, stronger than power or tradition or fear. What's that? Called a voice from the back, a young alpha Elara didn't recognize. Community. Draven's hand found Elara's. Someone believed I was worth saving when I'd stopped believing it myself. Someone stood beside me when running would have been smarter. Someone showed me that strength isn't about dominance. It's about the courage to be vulnerable, to admit you can't do it alone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some skeptical. I'm not asking you to follow me blindly, Draven continued. I'm asking you to help me build a system where no wolf has to face their battles alone, where power is shared, not hoarded, where the smallest omega has as much voice as the strongest alpha. Pretty words, called another voice, rougher, older. But what does that actually mean? It means choice. Elara stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. You choose whether to join. You choose who represents you. You choose how resources are distributed. The throne doesn't dictate anymore. It facilitates, protects, serves. And what do you get out of this? The question came from a woman near the front, her expression hard but not hostile. Why would a king give up power willingly? Because I've seen what absolute power does, Draven said quietly. It destroyed my father, nearly destroyed me. I won't let it destroy anyone else. He's not giving up power, Elara added. He's sharing it, making it sustainable. So when the next crisis comes, and it will, we face it together instead of tearing each other apart. The hall erupted in voices, arguing, questioning, debating. Elara caught Maven's eye across the room. The healer nodded slightly. This was good. Engagement meant possibility. For hours they talked, hammered out details, compromised, argued, made progress inch by painful inch. By sunset, they had a framework, rough, imperfect, but real. A federation of packs, voluntary membership, elected representatives forming a council with legislative power, the throne retaining executive authority, but subject to the council's oversight. Resources pooled and distributed based on need and contribution. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what they'd had. We'll need to ratify this, Leora said as the crowd began to disperse. Put it to a vote among all the packs. Agreed, Draven said. Give them 2 weeks to review the proposal. Then we reconvene and make it official. As the representatives filed out, some enthusiastic, others still wary, Elara felt the weight of what they'd started settling onto her shoulders. This could fail, she said quietly. It could, Draven agreed. But we're trying. That's more than most ever do. That night, as they prepared for bed in the small room they'd been sharing, Draven caught Elara's hand. I need to tell you something, he said. She turned, searching his face. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just... He hesitated, then pulled her close. When I first claimed you in that council hall, it was instinct, rage. I saw them hurting you and something in me snapped. I didn't think. I just acted. I know. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being instinct. It became choice. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I choose you, Elara. Not because fate threw us together. Not because you're useful or convenient. I choose you because you're brave and fierce, and you see things in me I didn't know existed. Elara's throat tightened. I choose you, too. Even knowing about the curse. Even knowing how hard it'll be. I choose you. The beast still rises sometimes, Draven warned. I still lose control. I'm still fighting, still trying, still here. Elara cupped his face gently. That's all I need. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promises neither of them could be sure they'd keep. But they tried anyway, because trying was what they did best. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. More packs sent representatives. Debates raged in every settlement. Some wolves embraced the new vision enthusiastically. Others rejected it outright, clinging to tradition and autonomy. And through it all, rumors swirled about Aldrich and Seraphine. They'd been spotted in the far southern territories. They were gathering supporters. They were planning something. We should hunt them down, Gareth argued one evening. End this before they can regroup. No, Draven said firmly. We're not assassins. If they break the terms of their exile, we'll respond. Until then, we focus on building something they can't tear down. But 3 days before the ratification vote, Maven burst into the hall, her face pale. They're coming, she gasped. Aldrich, Seraphine, and an army. 200 wolves, maybe more. They'll be here by tomorrow. The room went silent. How? Draven demanded. Where did they get that many? The outer packs, the ones who rejected the Federation. Maven's voice was grim. Aldrich promised them independence, autonomy, freedom from any central authority, and they believed him. Or they just want to watch it all burn, Elara said quietly. What do we do? Leora asked. We don't have the numbers to face them in open battle. Then we don't fight them. Elara's mind was racing, pieces clicking into place. We talk to them. Talk? Gareth looked incredulous. They're coming to kill us. They're coming because Aldrich convinced them we're a threat to their freedom, so we prove him wrong. Elara turned to Draven. We meet them, unarmed, show them we're not trying to control them. That's suicide, Gareth said flatly. It's the only way this doesn't end in bloodshed that destroys everything we've built. Elara's voice was fierce. We've spent 2 weeks talking about building trust, about community over power. Now we have to prove we mean it. Draven stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. We meet them at the border, tomorrow at dawn. Anyone who wants to come can, but no weapons, no aggression. We talk. Your Majesty, this is final, Draven said. Spread the word. We face them with words, not swords. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She stood at the window, watching the moon track across the sky, her mind churning with fears and possibilities. Second thoughts? Draven's voice came from behind her. 1,000 of them. She turned to face him. What if I'm wrong? What if they just cut us down? Then we die trying to build something better. Draven crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. But I don't think you're wrong. I think you see things the rest of us miss. You always have. I'm scared. So am I. He pulled her close. But we're scared together, and that makes it bearable. Dawn came too quickly. They rode out to meet Aldrich's army with 30 wolves behind them, volunteers who'd chosen to stand with them despite the risk. No weapons, no armor. Just wolves willing to bet their lives on the power of words. Aldrich's army waded across the valley, a dark mass of fur and steel and barely contained violence. At their head stood Aldrich and Seraphine, mounted on massive warhorses, their expressions cold and triumphant. Draven dismounted when they were still 50 yards apart. Elara followed, her heart hammering against her ribs. That's far enough, Aldrich called. Any closer and we attack. We're not here to fight, Draven called back. We're here to talk. There's nothing to discuss. You've tried to force the packs into submission under your federation. We're here to stop you. No one's being forced. Elara's voice rang clear. Every pack has a choice, join or don't. No one's threatened. No one's coerced. You're lying, Seraphine said. You're building an empire, centralizing power. We're building a partnership, Elara interrupted. One where small packs have the same voice as large ones. Where resources are shared instead of hoarded. Where weak omegas dictate to alphas, Seraphine sneered. Where tradition is destroyed. Where strength is punished. No, where strength is redefined. Elara stepped forward, alone, unarmed. Behind her, she heard Draven's sharp intake of breath, but he didn't stop her. You call me weak because I'm an Omega, because I was abused and broken and worthless. But I survived. I fought. I'm still here. That's not weakness. That's strength you're too blind to recognize. Murmurs rippled through Aldrich's army, some wolves shifting uncomfortably. You talk about tradition, Elara continued, her voice rising, about protecting pack autonomy. But what you really mean is protecting the right of strong wolves to dominate weak ones, to hoard power and resources while others starve, to abuse and discard anyone who doesn't fit your definition of valuable. That's exactly what you mean. Elara's voice cracked like a whip. I lived it, every day under my uncle's rule. Every moment I was told I was nothing, worth nothing, deserved nothing. And you want to preserve that system. Call it tradition. Make it sound noble. She turned, addressing Aldrich's entire army now. But here's the truth. That system failed you too. Every one of you. Because strength fades, injuries happen, age comes. And when it does, that system you're defending will discard you just as quickly as it discarded me. You'll be nothing, worth nothing. And there will be no one to catch you when you fall. Silence stretched across the valley. The Federation isn't about taking your power, Elara said, her voice softer now. It's about building something that catches all of us when we fall. A safety net, a community, a place where everyone, strong and weak, alpha and omega, has value, has voice, has worth. Pretty speech, Aldrich said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. But words don't change reality. Then let me show you reality. Draven stepped forward, standing beside Elara. I am cursed, damaged. I transform into a beast that has killed dozens. By your logic, I should be destroyed, put down like a rabid dog. He paused, meeting Aldrich's eyes. But Elara saw past the curse, saw the man fighting it, believed I was worth saving, and because of that belief, because she refused to accept that damage equals worthlessness, I'm still here, still fighting, still leading. Draven's gaze swept across the army. Every one of you has been damaged in some way, scarred, broken, hurt. In Aldrich's system, that makes you weak, expendable, but in ours, it makes you experienced, valuable, worthy of support and respect. This is manipulation, Seraphine hissed. Emotional appeals to what? Elara challenged. To their humanity? Their compassion? You say that like it's a bad thing. It's weakness. No. A new voice cut through the tension. One of Aldrich's wolves, a grizzled veteran with scars crossing his face, stepped forward. It's survival. I followed alphas like you my whole life, Seraphine. Strong, ruthless. And where did it get me? Scars, broken bones, and the knowledge that the moment I'm too injured to fight, I'm worthless to you. He turned to face his fellow soldiers. But they're offering something different. A place where the scars matter, where experience counts, where we're more than just weapons to be used and discarded. His voice roughened. I'm tired of being a weapon. I want to be a person. More voices rose. Agreement, support. Wolves stepping forward, lowering their weapons, their expressions conflicted but thoughtful. Traitors, Aldrich roared. All of you, return to formation, or what? The scarred veteran's voice was calm. You'll kill us? Prove their point about how you treat wolves who disagree with you? Aldrich's face flushed red with rage. He drew his sword, and Draven's hand shot out, catching the blade mid-swing. Blood welled between his fingers where the steel bit into flesh, but he didn't let go. No more violence, Draven said quietly. This ends here, now. Choose, Aldrich. Walk away or face justice for the coup you attempted. But either way, you're done hurting people. For a long, terrible moment, Aldrich stood frozen, his sword trapped in Draven's bleeding hand. Hatred burned in his eyes. Desperation. The knowledge that he'd lost. Then Seraphine moved. She'd been inching toward her saddlebag, and now her hand emerged holding a small crossbow, aimed directly at Elara. "If I can't have victory," she said, her voice cold, "I'll settle for revenge." Time slowed. Elara saw the finger tighten on the trigger, saw the bolt release, knew she couldn't dodge in time. And then Draven was there, his body slamming into hers, taking them both to the ground. The bolt struck him in the back, just below the shoulder blade. He grunted, his body going rigid with pain. "No!" Elara screamed. Chaos erupted. Aldrich's soldiers turned on Seraphine, disarming her, dragging her to the ground. Gareth and the others rushed forward, surrounding Draven and Elara in a protective circle. "Get Maven!" someone shouted. "Now!" Elara cradled Draven's head in her lap, her hands shaking. Blood spread across his back, dark and relentless. "You idiot," she whispered. "Why did you—" "Told you," Draven managed, his voice strained. "Together, that means I protect you. Not by dying. Not planning to." He tried to smile, but pain twisted it into a grimace. Takes more than one bolt to kill a cursed king. But Elara could feel him trembling, could see the way his eyes were losing focus. The bolt had been poisoned. She could see it in the black veins spreading from the wound. "Draven, stay with me, please." Trying. His hand found hers, grip weak. "But if I don't make it, you're going to make it. Listen, if I don't, you lead them. Build the Federation. Show them—" He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Show them that strength comes from compassion, that broken things can still be beautiful. Stop talking like you're dying. Elara," I said stop. Tears streamed down her face. "You don't get to save me and then leave me. That's not how this works. We're in this together, remember?" Draven's eyes were closing. "Together," he whispered. Then Maven was there, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, examining the wound, barking orders. "Wolfsbane and Nightshade," she said grimly. "Whoever made this bolt knew what they were doing. We need to get him somewhere I can work. Now." They carried him back to Raven's Edge on a makeshift stretcher, Elara running beside him the entire way, her hand gripping his. Behind them, Aldrich's army followed, not as enemies, but as witnesses to what had happened, to Seraphine's final, desperate act of violence. Maven worked for hours, drawing out the poison drop by drop, fighting to keep Draven's heart beating. Elara sat beside him, refusing to leave, refusing to accept anything except his survival. "Come back to me," she whispered over and over. "Please, come back." As night fell, Draven's fever spiked. His body convulsed, the curse responding to the poison, trying to transform as a defense mechanism. But he was too weak. The transformation stuck halfway, bones breaking and reforming, skin rippling with fur that couldn't quite manifest. "Hold him down!" Maven shouted. It took 4 wolves to pin him. Draven thrashed, screaming, his mind lost somewhere between man and beast and the darkness trying to claim him. And Elara remembered Nessa's vial. She pulled it from her belt with shaking hands. The old magic, the dangerous magic. "What are you doing?" Maven demanded. "Saving him." Elara uncorked the vial, the liquid inside glowing faintly. "You said this gives strength, speed, power." "For you, yes, but he's already fighting the curse. If you give him more power, then maybe he'll be strong enough to fight the poison too." Elara met Maven's eyes. "I have to try." Before Maven could stop her, Elara tilted Draven's head back and poured the liquid between his lips. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Draven's back arched, his eyes flying open, blazing pure silver. Power erupted from him in waves, knocking everyone back. The incomplete transformation reversed violently, snapping bones back into human shape, burning away the poison in a flash of heat and light. When it was over, Draven collapsed onto the bed, gasping, his skin slick with sweat. But alive. Human. Whole. "You're insane," Maven breathed. "That should have killed him." "But it didn't," Elara said, her own hand shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. "He's too stubborn to die." Draven's eyes focused on her, recognition flooding back. "What did you do?" "Saved you. Like you saved me. We really need to stop almost dying for each other." "Agreed." Elara collapsed beside him, exhaustion crashing over her.
But maybe let's survive first, then make new rules. Deal. Draven recovered over the next 3 days, his resilience once again proving superhuman. And during those 3 days, something shifted in the territories. Word spread of what had happened. Of Seraphine's attempt to murder Elara in cold blood.
Of Draven taking the bolt meant for her. Of the wolves who'd abandoned Aldrich's cause when they'd heard the truth. Public opinion turned decisively. When the ratification vote was finally held, it wasn't even close. 32 packs voted to join the Federation. Only 5 voted against. And even those 5 didn't oppose it. They simply chose to remain independent, which was their right. The day the results were announced, Elara stood beside Draven on a platform built in Raven's Edge's central square. Hundreds of wolves filled the space, their faces turned upward, waiting. "We have a decision," Leora announced, her voice carrying through the crowd. "The Federation is ratified. The Council will convene in 1 month to begin drafting legislation. And the throne," she turned to Draven, "remains in the hands of Draven Kael by unanimous consent of the founding packs." Cheers erupted. Not the fearful, obligatory loyalty of subjects to a tyrant, but genuine, hopeful celebration. Draven raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. "I accept this responsibility," he said, "but not as a king who rules over you, as a king who serves alongside you, who leads by example, not by force, who recognizes that my power comes from your trust, not your fear." He turned to Elara, extending his hand. "And I will not rule alone. Beside me stands Elara Vance. She has no title, no rank, no traditional claim to power. But she has something more important, the courage to speak truth when silence would be safer, the strength to stand when falling would be easier, the wisdom to see what needs to change, and the will to change it." Draven's voice rose, filled with conviction. "From this day forward, she is my partner in all things, my equal, my co-ruler. And anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." Stunned silence. Then Maven started clapping, slowly at first, then faster, louder. Seren joined her. "Gareth! Leora!" One by one, the entire crowd erupted in applause. Elara felt tears streaming down her face, not from sadness, not from fear, but from the overwhelming, almost painful joy of being seen, of being valued, of finally, after a lifetime of being told she was nothing, being recognized as something. "You don't have to do this," she whispered to Draven. "Yes, I do." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Because none of this works without you. I don't work without you. You saved me, Elara, in every way a person can be saved, and I want the world to know it." The celebration lasted long into the night, but eventually Elara and Draven slipped away, seeking quiet in the chaos. They walked to the edge of Raven's Sedge, where the forest began, standing beneath stars bright enough to ache. "A year ago," Draven said quietly, "I was alone. Cursed, convinced I'd die fighting a battle no one else could see." "A year ago," Elara echoed, "I was invisible, broken, convinced I deserved every bit of pain they gave me. And now? Now we're here." Elara turned to face him. "Together, building something neither of us could have built alone. Think it'll last? I don't know, but I think it's worth fighting for." She took his hand. "We are worth fighting for." Draven pulled her close, and in that moment, standing at the edge of a forest under a sky full of stars, Elara understood something fundamental. She had spent her whole life searching for freedom, for escape from cages built by others' expectations and cruelty. But freedom wasn't about being alone. It wasn't about running away or hiding or making herself small enough to avoid notice. Freedom was choosing who to stand beside, who to fight for, who to build something beautiful with even when the odds seemed impossible. Freedom was Draven's hand in hers, Maven's fierce loyalty, Seren's quiet support, Gareth's gruff protection, the wolves who'd knelt in that council chamber and said, "We believe in you," when no one else would. Freedom was the right to be broken and still be valuable, to be scared and still be brave, to be damaged and still be worthy of love. "What are you thinking?" Draven asked. "That I spent years sketching forests because I thought that's where freedom lived, in running, in escaping, in being somewhere else. Elara looked up at him. But I was wrong. Freedom lives here, in this moment, with you. Draven's arms tightened around her. I love you, he said simply. Not because you saved me. Not because you're useful or convenient. I love you because you showed me that broken things can still be powerful, that cursed things can still be worthy, that monsters can still be human. I love you too, Elara whispered, because you saw me when I was invisible, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and taught me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up, together. They stood there, two people who'd been told they were worthless, holding each other beneath a sky that stretched infinite and uncaring and beautiful. Behind them, a new system was being born. Imperfect, challenging, requiring constant work and compromise and faith. Ahead of them, the future waited, uncertain, dangerous, full of possibility. And between them, in the space where two broken souls had found each other and chosen to build something better, hope bloomed like fire in the dark. A month later, when the first council session convened, Elara took her seat beside Draven, not as his shadow, not as decoration, but as an equal voice in shaping what came next. The wolves who'd once dismissed her as worthless now listened when she spoke, considered her ideas, debated with her as they would any leader. It wasn't easy. Old patterns died hard. Some wolves still questioned her right to be there, still saw her Omega status as weakness. But she stood her ground, spoke her truth, and slowly, grudgingly, they learned. And Draven, he continued to fight his curse. The beast still rose sometimes, triggered by stress or rage, or the simple weight of responsibility. But Elara was always there to talk him down, to anchor him, to remind him who he was beneath the monster. They learned to work as a unit, his strength balanced by her wisdom, her compassion tempered by his experience, two halves of a whole that worked because they chose to make it work. Years later, when historians wrote about this time, they would call it the Great Reformation, the moment when the wolf pack shifted from kingdoms to federation, from hierarchy to partnership. But those who lived through it, who fought and bled and built it brick by brick, they knew the truth. It wasn't a reformation, it was a revolution. Started by two wolves who'd been told they were nothing and refused to believe it. A king who carried a curse and chose to fight it anyway. And an Omega who'd been broken by the world and decided to remake it instead. Together, they proved that strength came in forms the old world had never recognized, that power could be shared without being diminished, that the most profound changes came not from conquest, but from the simple radical act of believing in each other. And when Elara finally fell asleep that night, decades of exhaustion catching up to her all at once, she dreamed not of forests where she ran alone. She dreamed of home, of Draven's arms around her, of a hall full of wolves who saw her as she truly was and chose to stand with her anyway. She dreamed of freedom, and for the first time in her life, she woke up in it,